The call at 1:47 a.m. The bedroom was dark except for a strip of weak light slipping through the gap in the curtains. 1:47 a.m. Marcus Bennett lay flat on his back, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Beside him, Isabella slept on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek, breathing softly through parted lips. Her phone sat on the nightstand where he had placed it back after the call. After the messages, after the photographs, after the moment suspicion had stopped being suspicion and become something heavier, something organized. He knew enough now. Not everything, maybe not even close, but enough. He could still wake her. Turn on the lamp, say her name. Hold the phone in front of her face and watch the first lie arrive, then the second, then the version where she cried and asked him not to do this tonight. He didn't. He lay still and listened to her breathe. Somewhere downstairs, the refrigerator hummed. A sprinkler clicked on outside, then began its soft, rhythmic sweep over somebody's lawn. The whole neighborhood seemed to be sleeping inside its money in silence. In the bed, Isabella gave a small shift of her shoulder and settled again. Marcus looked at the ceiling and felt something inside him cooling into shape. She would not see him cry. She would see what he took away. Marcus Bennett, 44, had never thought of himself as a man things happened to. He owned a logistics company in San Jose, lived in a 4-bedroom house in Palo Alto, paid bills early, built routines that held. His wife stayed home. His daughter was in private school. He had the kind of life people were supposed to want. But now, lying in the dark beside his sleeping wife, he knew he had been wrong about one thing that mattered, and he was already thinking in plans. 12 hours earlier, the house had still looked normal. He came back from his run just after noon on Sunday, damp through his shirt, the back of his neck sticky with sweat. The side gate had been left unlatched. A sprinkler misted the narrow strip of lawn by the fence, and his left shoe darkened when he stepped through it. Inside, the kitchen was bright and quiet. Sunlight lay across the island in a white block. A mug with cold coffee sat in the sink. The dishwasher was clean, but still full. Maya's chemistry binder was open on the counter beside a bowl with 2 avocados going soft. "Bella," he called. No answer. He pulled a bottle of water from the fridge and drank half of it standing there. The house had the stale stillness it got when everybody was technically home, but nobody was together. A television was not on. No music. No footsteps overhead. He went upstairs and found the bedroom half dark, curtains mostly drawn against the afternoon glare. Isabella was in bed in one of his old gray t-shirts, propped against the headboard, with no book, no laptop, no television on. Just lying there, with her face set in that flat, shut-down way she had when she wanted the day to leave her alone. "You okay?" he asked. She touched 2 fingers to her temple without opening her eyes. "Headache." "You sick?" "No." He stood in the doorway a second longer. Her phone was next to her thigh, screened down on the blanket. "You eat?" She gave a slight shrug. "Not really. I'll make lunch. I'm not hungry." "You should eat something." I said I'm not hungry. Her tone was not sharp enough to count as a fight, just tired, or meant to sound tired. Marcus leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. "Toast, then." She opened her eyes at that, like correcting him cost her more than accepting help. "Fine." Downstairs, he washed his hands and began pulling things out of the refrigerator. Turkey, cheddar, lettuce, mayo, sourdough. He moved automatically with the efficiency of somebody who liked things done correctly the first time. He sliced grapes into halves because Maya ignored fruit otherwise. He set a pan on the stove for grilled sandwiches, then put bread in the toaster for Isabella. At the island, he checked his email while the pan heated. 2 weekend messages from dispatch. One from a client asking if the Santa Clara shipment could be moved up by 48 hours. It couldn't, not without paying for it. He flagged it and set the phone down. The kitchen smelled like butter and toasted bread by the time Maya wandered in, wearing loose plaid pajama pants and a navy sweatshirt that probably belonged to one of her friends now more than it belonged to her. Her hair was tied up badly. A pencil stuck through it for no clear reason. "Mom still in bed?" she asked. "Headache." Maya opened the refrigerator and stared inside without taking anything out. "Again?" Marcus glanced at her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged, still looking in the fridge. "Nothing." He slid a sandwich in the pan. "Then don't say it like that." She took out a Sprite, shut the fridge with her hip, and leaned against the counter. "Can I go to Jenna's later?" "What time?" "I don't know, like 3? "After you clean up the kitchen." She let out a breath through her nose. "Why?" "Because you live here. I haven't even done anything." "You're about to eat." "That's not the same thing?" Marcus looked at her. 16 had brought a new kind of resistance into Maya. Not loud, not theatrical, just constant. A mild current under everything. Isabella called it normal. Marcus called it lazy half the time, and disrespected the other half. Either way, it exhausted him. "You can rinse dishes and wipe counters," he said. "I'm not asking for hard labor." Maya took the bowl of grapes he set down and said, "You kind of make it feel like hard labor." He ignored that. "Take your mother some toast." Maya made a face. "Why me?" "Because I'm carrying the tray." He arranged Isabella's plate with the kind of care he did not think about until later. Toast cut in halves, sandwich cut cleanly, grapes in a small bowl, a napkin folded under the fork. Then he carried it upstairs. Isabella was sitting up now. She took the tray from him and said, "Thanks. How bad is it?" "Bad enough. You want me to cancel dinner at your sister's next weekend if you're getting sick?" She looked up at him then, too quickly. "I'm not getting sick." "Okay." He waited, but she had already looked back down at the tray. She took a bite of toast, a small one, chewed without interest. Her phone buzzed once against the blanket. She flipped it face down more firmly with the side of her hand. Marcus noticed that. Not because it was dramatic, because it was practiced. He said, "Need Advil?" "I took some." "Water?" "I have water." There was a pause in the room that wanted to become something and didn't. "All right," he said, "eat what you can." She nodded without looking at him. Downstairs, Maya had eaten most of her sandwich and left the plate in the sink exactly where she'd been told not to. Marcus finished his own lunch standing at the counter, then turned on the faucet and began rinsing plates. "Maya," he called, from the family room. "What?" "You're doing dishes." A second later, she appeared in the doorway with her phone in hand. I said, "Okay." "You said nothing." She rolled her eyes and took the sponge from him. "Same thing?" "It's not." She ran water over a plate. "You always have to make everything a lesson." Marcus dried his hands on a towel. "If you do things when you're asked, nothing becomes a lesson." She gave him a look that was too old for her face. "That's not true." He almost asked what that was supposed to mean, but something in the way she lowered her gaze to the sink stopped him. He did not want to spend Sunday afternoon fighting with his daughter over tone and implication. At 2, he went into his home office with a cup of coffee and shut the door. The room faced the side yard and got the worst light in the house after noon. His desk was orderly: monitor, legal pad, charging dock, framed photo of him and Maya from a Giants game 3 years ago. He worked through invoices, reviewed a contract revision, answered 2 emails, then spent 20 minutes building a schedule for the week that would probably change by Tuesday morning. The familiar movement of numbers and timing settled him. Freight made sense. People promised, delayed, miscalculated, lied sometimes, but mostly because of pressure and cost and weather and human incompetence. There was logic to it. Damage had causes. Around 3:30, Isabella passed the office door on her way to the bathroom. He heard her footsteps, light and quick, heard the bathroom door shut. A minute later came the muffled vibration of her phone on the hallway console table, then silence. He looked up from his screen and listened without meaning to. No voices, no call. When he came out at 5, she was in the kitchen making tea. She had showered. Her hair was down and blow-dried, makeup on lightly. Not enough to look dressed up, but enough that the headache suddenly seemed less substantial than it had at noon. She wore fitted jeans and a cream sweater with the sleeves pushed up. Her phone was on the counter beside the kettle, screen down. "You feeling better?" he asked. "A little." She reached for the mug before the kettle fully clicked off, then pulled her hand back from the heat with a small curse. Marcus stepped forward and turned the kettle off for her. "Careful?" "I'm fine." He opened the refrigerator and looked in without seeing much. "You barely ate." "I know." "You want soup tonight?" She leaned one hip against the counter. "Whatever's easy." "Everything's easy." She gave a small smile that did not fully happen. "That's not true either." He looked at her then. There were times in the last year, maybe longer, when he'd had the vague sense that Isabella had shifted a degree away from him, like a picture frame, hung slightly crooked, but not enough to justify fixing. She forgot things he told her. She answered from another room. She looked distracted at dinner, then irritated when he asked what was wrong. He had explained it to himself in ordinary ways. Marriage, routine, hormones, boredom, midlife restlessness with no clear object. None of it had required further inspection. Now, in the kitchen, she would not quite meet his eyes. At dinner, she picked at grilled chicken and roasted potatoes, moved pieces around the plate, then said she was exhausted and went upstairs at 8:30 with another hand to her temple. Maya watched her leave. "She doesn't seem that sick." Marcus cut another piece of chicken. "Eat." That wasn't disrespectful, it was just true. "Eat your dinner, Maya." Maya did, but not much. At 16, she had entered that phase of half living in the house and half living inside her phone, surfacing mostly to ask for rides, money, or a signature. Tonight, she kept glancing upstairs after Isabella disappeared, as if trying to decide whether something in the air deserved a name. When she finished, she took her plate to the sink and said, "Can I still go to Jenna's tomorrow after school? As long as your homework's done." "It will be. And home by 8. 9. 8:30? Maya paused, considering whether the extra 30 minutes was worth arguing with. "Fine." She turned to go, then looked back at him. "Dad?" "What?" Another pause. "Nothing." She left the kitchen. Marcus stood at the sink a long moment with his own unfinished plate in front of him, looking at the dark window over the backyard. His reflection floated over the glass. Beyond it, the patio lights cast weak circles on stone. He could hear Maya moving around upstairs, a drawer opening, her bedroom door closing. Somewhere farther off, a dog barking in the short, irritated bursts. At 9:30, Marcus sat alone in the family room with Netflix playing to an audience of 1. He was not really watching. A detective show moved people through dim streets and ugly apartments while he sat in the soft blue light, one ankle over his knee, phone in hand, not reading whatever was on it. The room held too much evidence of ordinary life. School photos, framed vacation pictures, a ceramic bowl Isabella had bought from an art fair in Los Gatos, and then declared too expensive for what it was, as if buyer's remorse could become sophistication if phrased correctly. A blanket folded over the arm of the sofa that nobody ever folded except him. At 11:15, he turned the television off, and the room immediately felt larger and less forgiving. Upstairs, the bedroom was dark. Isabella was already in bed on her side, facing away from him. One lamp off, the other never turned on. Her breathing was slow. The phone sat on the nightstand, not charging. Marcus stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment. He could not have said why. Then he went to shower in the guest bath instead of the primary because she said the light bothered her when she had headaches. When he came back, the room smelled faintly of her night cream and fabric softener. He got into bed carefully, keeping to his side. She did not stir. He lay awake. The house made its normal nighttime sounds, the air shifting through vents, a distant click in the pipes, the low mechanical throb of the refrigerator downstairs. Isabella's breathing remained steady. Marcus watched the ceiling disappear and reappear in the sweep of passing headlights from the street. He could have slept. On another night, he probably would have. He had work in the morning, a driver issue to sort out by 10, a call with a customs broker, a client lunch in Santa Clara. Enough structure to carry him forward. Instead, he lay there with a faint unease that refused to become a thought. Then the phone vibrated, once. Then after a short stop, again. He turned his head toward the nightstand. A rectangle of light cut across the wood. The name on the screen was bright enough to read in the dark. Liam. Marcus reached for the phone before the sound could swell enough to wake Isabella. He slid out of bed, crossed the room, and stepped into the hallway before answering. "Hello?" For a moment there was only breathing, male, shallow, impatient. Then a man said, "Your husband there? I need the 500 tonight." Marcus did not understand the sentence all at once. The words arrived separately and assembled a half-second too late. He said, "Who is this?" The line went dead. Marcus stood in the hallway with the phone in his hand. The screen showed the call duration, 8 seconds. He listened to the silence on the other side of the bedroom door, to the faint rotating tick of the ceiling fan inside the room, to his own breath, which had not changed as much as he thought it should. He looked down at the phone again. The wallpaper was a picture of Maya at age 12 holding a pumpkin almost as big as her torso. He unlocked the phone. Later, if anybody had asked, he would have said that was the moment the line was crossed. But even as he did it, some part of him understood the line had already moved. A strange man had called his wife after 1 a.m. asking for money and assuming he should not be there to answer. Privacy had already been spent. He opened the recent calls first. Liam appeared again and again. Not every day, some days twice, some days 7 times. Late afternoon, mid-morning. Once at 6:08 a.m. on a Tuesday. Marcus remembered, because a truck had jackknifed outside Gilroy and cost him half a day. Another at 11:52 p.m. on a night he had fallen asleep downstairs after a glass of bourbon. He scrolled upward weeks, maybe months. Then he opened Viber. Messages loaded in a long, seamless thread, recent ones first, then more. Hundreds. For a second, he simply stared at the screen, not reading, only recognizing volume. Then his eyes adjusted and individual lines began to separate. "Miss you already. Don't text me right now. You said you'd help me. I do help you. That's not the same as showing up. I can't tonight." A picture from Isabella. Her bare knee in a car, a hand on the steering wheel, Marcus recognized as neither hers nor his. He scrolled farther. "I love you." Then "prove it." Stop making everything about money. Easy for you to say. He swallowed once and kept scrolling. Photos, hotel confirmations, times and places disguised badly. Fragments of argument, flirtation, complaint, need. One picture of Isabella in the green dress she'd worn to a fundraiser in Menlo Park last month, taking a mirror selfie in what looked like a boutique dressing room. She was smiling in a way he had not seen directed at him in a long time. Playful, slightly ashamed of wanting admiration, wanting it anyway. Below it, Liam had written, Jesus Christ. You wearing that for me or for your boring husband? And her answer 2 minutes later, guess. Marcus read that exchange twice. He kept going. The affair had texture. That was what unsettled him most. It was not one bad choice one night, one lapse that could be named and hated cleanly. It had appointments, delays, small resentments, reassurance, logistics. It had become a second job, a second language, a second self she carried around while cooking dinner, buying groceries, asking Maya about school. Then the money surfaced again, more often than love eventually. I need 300. I sent 200 last week. That was last week. I can't keep doing this. Sure you can. A week later, 500. Tonight, I'm serious. And from Isabella, he's home. Marcus looked at that message for a long time. Not because it was the worst one. There were lines lower down that cut more directly. But this one reduced him with such efficiency. He was not Marcus. Not a husband, not a man with habits and moods and a body in the next room. He was a condition, a scheduling issue. He kept scrolling until he found the message that had probably led to the call. Your husband there? No answer. Then 3 minutes later, answer me. And a missed call. Then the second call, the one Marcus had picked up. From inside the bedroom came a slight rustle of sheets. Marcus froze and listened. Nothing followed. He locked the phone and stood in the dark hallway, the screen black in his hand. The house around him seemed suddenly staged. The framed family photos along the upstairs hall. Maya's closed door. The runner rug Isabella had bought because the hardwood echoed too much. His own robe hanging on the back of the bathroom door. Everything still in place. Everything intact enough to be obscene. He could wake her now. He pictured it in detail. Turning on the lamp. Hearing her sharp intake of breath. Watching confusion arrange itself on her face. Then fear, then calculation. Isabella was not quick under pressure, but she was quick enough to reach for whatever version of herself a moment required. Injured wife, misunderstood mother, tired woman, cornered liar. He could already hear the phrases she might use. It's not what you think. Let me explain. Why were you going through my phone? Marcus almost laughed at that one. Not out loud, just a hard, dry movement somewhere in his throat. He looked back at the bedroom door. What would waking her give him tonight? Answers? Some, maybe. Truth? No. Not the kind that mattered now. The phone felt warm in his hand from how tightly he had been holding it. He thought suddenly, absurdly, of his office downstairs, of file folders, account passwords, the operating agreement for the business, which accounts Isabella's name was on, which ones it wasn't, the house, the cars, the tuition account, credit cards. The personal line of credit he had opened 2 years ago and never told her much about because she hated business details, until they paid for something she wanted. The thought did not arrive as revenge at first. It arrived as order, as the cleanest available language. He went back into the bedroom. Isabella had not moved much. One arm now lay outside the blanket, hand open on the mattress. Her phone charger trailed over the edge of the nightstand like a forgotten cord in a hotel room. Marcus set the phone down exactly where it had been. Then he got back into bed. The mattress shifted. Isabella made a small sound in her sleep, or in whatever she was doing, but she did not wake. Marcus lay on his back again, eyes open. The ceiling was just visible, flat and dim. He folded his hands over his stomach, then let them fall. He could smell her shampoo on the pillow beside him, her skin cream, the faint detergent from the sheets, the ordinary sense of a marriage that 12 hours earlier had still been intact enough to stand inside without embarrassment. Now he lay beside his wife and began, almost calmly, to inventory his life. House, business, joint checking, savings, Maya's college fund, the Amex, the Wells Fargo line, the brokerage account, insurance policies, contracts. He thought of names, attorneys, a forensic accountant one of his clients had used during an ugly divorce, the quiet, expensive family law firm in downtown Palo Alto that one of the dads at Sacred Heart had mentioned over bourbon at a fundraiser, with the half-amused tone men use when talking about disaster that had happened to somebody else. Beside him, Isabella breathed in, breathed out. Marcus stared at the ceiling. He did not touch her. He did not close his eyes. The question in the room was no longer whether she had betrayed him. It was what he was going to do with her. The price of 13 years. 15, Marcus got out of bed without turning on the light. The room was gray with early morning. The kind of soft, expensive dimness that came before sunrise in neighborhoods where sprinklers were automated and nobody left a car on blocks in the driveway. Isabella was asleep on her stomach now, one arm bent under the pillow, hair spread across the case he had bought in a set she said felt more like a hotel. Her phone sat on the nightstand where he had put it back a few hours earlier. Marcus stood beside the bed a second, not looking at her exactly, just letting his eyes rest there. Then he left the room. Downstairs, the kitchen tiles were cold through his socks. He filled the kettle, changed his mind, and set it back down. Coffee instead. He measured grounds into the machine with more care than the task required, flattening the scoop against the rim of the canister before dumping it in. When the first burnt-rich smell spread through the kitchen, he opened his laptop at the island and signed into his accounts. He worked through them one by one. Personal checking, joint checking, savings, the brokerage account, the retirement accounts, the business accounts, a money market account he had opened 2 years ago and barely used. He wrote numbers on a legal pad in narrow, controlled lines. Account totals. Which ones Isabella had access to, which ones she did not. Which cards auto-paid from where? Which statements still came by mail, which by email? He opened another tab and pulled up the mortgage documents, then the deed, then the LLC paperwork for the company. His coffee cooled untouched beside the laptop. By 6:50, he had 4 browser windows open, 2 bank apps on his phone, and a growing list of passwords he needed to change later from the office desktop, because it would be faster there. He kept expecting some part of the process to surprise him, to reveal how much he had shared without paying attention, how exposed he really was. Instead, the opposite happened. The structure of his life was almost aggressively clear. Most of it was in his name. The house had been purchased after a good year, when rates were lower, and he was moving too fast to care about symbolism. The mortgage was joint, but the down payment had come from his business distributions and a brokerage account opened before the marriage. The company had always been his. The investment accounts were his. 3 of the 4 credit cards were his, with Isabella as an authorized user on 2. The main savings account she dipped into for household expenses was funded by monthly transfers he set up and monitored, because she never remembered what anything cost until it already had. There had been fights about that early on, about receipts, about whether she needed to know the difference between a debit card and a credit card if the money was all the same money anyway. He had stopped trying after a while. It had seemed easier to just handle things. He sat back in the chair and looked at the numbers on the page. For 13 years, Isabella had treated paperwork the way some people treated unpleasant weather, real but outside, and something to wait out until it passed. She signed where he pointed, asked broad questions with no interest in the answer, complained when the answers sounded boring. What do we owe on the house? Enough. How much did you move into the market account? Some. Can we afford it? Yes. He had once taken that as trust, or maybe as division of labor, the practical arrangement of adults who played to their strengths. Now it looked like something else, not innocence exactly, not even dependence, more like appetite without curiosity. She wanted the result, not the architecture under it. Marcus wrote another column, immediate. Change passwords, move discretionary cash, freeze the Amex, pull credit reports, copy statements. Then he stopped with the pen hovering above the pad. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional soft click from the coffee maker keeping the pot warm. Outside, a garbage truck braked somewhere down the block. A mechanical groan, then the slam of bins. He looked toward the staircase. He had not asked himself yet whether he wanted a divorce. The word sat in his head with the clean, printed look of legal forms and not much feeling attached to it. He could picture the process more easily than the question underneath it. Paperwork. Disclosure, attorneys, temporary orders, custody schedules. He could picture the work. He could even picture the anger. What he could not bring himself near, not yet, was the smaller question hidden underneath all that machinery. Do I still love her? He closed the mortgage tab and opened the kitchen calendar instead. School events. A dentist appointment for Maya next Thursday. A note Isabella had added about ordering flowers for somebody's baby shower. The ordinariness of it made him go still. At 7:30, he heard movement upstairs. He closed the laptop, tore the top sheet from the legal pad, folded it once, and slid it into a folder from the mail stack. Then he got up and began making breakfast. Eggs, sourdough, turkey bacon, because Isabella said real bacon made the kitchen smell greasy for hours. He cut strawberries into a bowl and set the Greek yogurt out for Maya, who preferred to assemble breakfast as if it were a negotiation she had entered reluctantly. When Isabella came in, she was wearing leggings and one of his old quarter zips, her hair twisted up loosely, face bare and slightly puffy with sleep. She paused in the kitchen doorway like she was surprised to find him there fully dressed. "You're up early." Marcus set 2 pieces of toast on their plate and couldn't sleep. She came farther in, rubbing one wrist with the other hand. "You didn't come back to bed." "I did." She frowned a little, trying to place the night. "I must have been out." "Looks like it." She walked to the coffee maker and reached for a mug. Her movements were slow, ordinary. No guilt on the surface, no visible hangover from betrayal. Just the half-muted stiffness of a woman who had not slept well and expected sympathy as a natural resource. "You feeling better?" Marcus asked. "Mostly." He slid a plate toward the stool she usually took at the island. "Eat." She looked at the eggs, then at him. "You made breakfast?" "I know, very shocking." That got a small smile out of her. "You're in a mood." Marcus shrugged and went to the refrigerator for the butter he had forgotten to put away. "I've got a lot to do." She sat and tucked one leg under herself on the stool. "Work? When is it not?" She took a sip of coffee. "You were restless last night." He kept his back to her a moment too long. Then he shut the fridge and turned around. "Had stuff on my mind." "What stuff?" "Stuff that pays for this kitchen." She made a face at him over the mug. "There he is." Normally that might have led to something lighter, some habitual sparring between them about work, about money, about how he was always half at the office, even at home. This morning the line came and went without landing. Maya came in a minute later in her uniform skirt and hoodie, AirPods in, one shoe half untied. She took in the scene, the plates, both parents already in the kitchen, the two neat quiet, and slowed almost imperceptibly. "Why are you both awake?" Marcus said, "Some of us have jobs." Maya pulled one AirPod out. "I have school." "You also have one shoe untied." She glanced down, annoyed at being caught by something so small, and set her backpack on the floor. "I know." Isabella reached for the strawberries and pushed the bowl toward her. "Eat something before you leave." Maya took a piece, then another. "Mom, are you going to be weird all day again?" Marcus looked at her. Maya looked back, chin up a fraction too high. "What? I meant sick." "I'm fine," Isabella said, but her voice had that thinness it got when she felt judged. Maya sat on the stool opposite her mother and peeled the lid off the yogurt. "You said that yesterday too." "That's enough," Marcus said. Maya dropped her gaze to the yogurt. "Okay." For a few seconds, the kitchen filled with small sounds only. Spoon against plastic. Coffee pouring. The heating vent kicking on under the window. Sunlight was starting to come through stronger now, catching the edge of Isabella's mug and the silver handle of the refrigerator. Marcus looked at his wife's hands. No ring this morning. She did that sometimes when her fingers swelled overnight. Her wedding ring sat upstairs in the dish in the bathroom with a pair of earrings and 2 hair ties. He had noticed its absence from the start of breakfast and disliked that he had noticed. At 9, he stood by the front door with his keys in one hand and his work bag in the other. "I've got a meeting in Palo Alto," he said. Isabella was on the sofa in the family room with her laptop open and a throw blanket over her legs, though the house was not cold. "A client?" "Something like that." She looked up. "You'll be back for lunch?" "Probably not." "Oh." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Can you stop by Grove Market if you're near it? We're out of olive oil." Marcus looked at her for a beat longer than necessary. "Sure," he said. She nodded and went back to the screen. He left before the answer had fully settled in the room. The law office was on the 3rd floor of a glass and stone building off University Avenue, the kind of place that smelled faintly of lemon polish and filtered air and made everybody lower their voices in the lobby without being asked. Marcus checked in with reception, gave his name, and sat in a leather chair beneath a large abstract painting in muted blues that probably cost more than it looked like it should. He had chosen Reynolds because he had a reputation for handling divorces involving business owners without making them theatrical. Quiet, expensive, efficient. That was what Marcus wanted. Not a shark exactly. Sharks were messy. He wanted someone who understood preservation. When the receptionist led him back, Reynolds was standing near the window of a corner office with one hand in his pocket, silver hair cut close, tie already loosened by 10 in the morning in a way that suggested confidence rather than fatigue. "Mr. Bennett." "Marcus is fine." They shook hands and sat. Reynolds did not waste much time on small talk. "What can I help you with?" Marcus set his phone face down on the desk and looked briefly at the framed degrees on the wall behind Reynolds, then at the yellow legal pad in front of him. He had planned the phrasing in the car and was suddenly irritated by how rehearsed it now sounded in his own head. "I'm not filing anything," he said. "I just want to understand exposure, worst-case scenario." Reynolds gave a slight nod, not curious yet or hiding it well. "Marriage length? 13 years. Children? 116. Primary assets? House, business, investment accounts, retirement, some commercial property through the company." Reynolds uncapped a pen. "And your concern is division?" "Protection," Marcus said. Then, because the word felt too blunt, he added, "I built most of it." Reynolds wrote something down. California makes that a more complicated sentence than people like. Marcus let that sit. For the next 20 minutes, Reynolds walked him through the broad outline. Community property, separate property, commingling, income earned during the marriage, business growth during the marriage if the business predated it, documentation, tracing, the difference between what felt fair and what the court would care about. He spoke clearly and without performance, which Marcus appreciated. No false sympathy, no dramatic warnings, just a map of damage. "At minimum," Reynolds said, "you need clean records. Account histories, business valuations, acquisition dates, any documentation showing premarital ownership or separate contributions. If things stay hypothetical, fine. If they don't, you don't want to start gathering under pressure." Marcus nodded. Reynolds glanced at him over the top of the pad. "Is there infidelity?" The question landed lightly, almost casually, and Marcus still felt his jaw tighten. "I'm asking because clients often assume it changes the financial analysis," Reynolds said. "In California, generally, it doesn't. Not the way they want it to." Marcus leaned back in the chair. "So if one person blows up the marriage, it doesn't matter." "It matters to people," Reynolds said. "It just may not matter the way they expect in court." The room was quiet after that. From somewhere outside came the muffled beep of a truck backing up, then the low sweep of traffic from the avenue. Marcus looked at the window. Reflected faintly in the glass, he could see himself sitting there in a navy jacket and open-collar shirt, looking like a man discussing tax exposure or a commercial lease. Anybody passing the door would have assumed he was there for something practical and dull. Maybe he was. Reynolds set the pen down. "What do you want?" Marcus almost answered too fast. "Protection, control, to not be made a fool of." Instead, he said, "I don't know yet." Reynolds gave a single nod as if that was, in fact, the right answer. "Then don't make noisy moves until you do. Gather documents, don't empty accounts in a panic, don't threaten, don't start performing for the other side before you've decided what outcome you actually want." "The other side," Marcus repeated, and heard the bitterness in it only after it was out. Reynolds did not react. If this becomes a legal problem, it will reward discipline, not outrage. When the meeting ended, Marcus paid the consultation fee without looking at the amount and stood to leave. At the door, Reynolds said, "Mr. Bennett." Marcus turned. If there's a business involved, quiet is often worth more than anger, at least at the beginning. Marcus gave a short nod. That's the idea. Outside, Palo Alto was bright and deceptively mild. People were out with coffee cups, laptops, strollers, dogs with expensive haircuts. A woman in running clothes stood outside a cafe laughing too loudly into her phone. Two men in fleece vests crossed the street without hurrying, deep in some conversation about funding or product or one of the other local religions. Marcus walked half a block before realizing he had stopped in front of the flower shop. It was not even a conscious decision, not at first. He had bought Isabella flowers often enough over the years that the act no longer felt romantic. It was maintenance, re-entry, a gesture that kept the texture of a marriage smooth. He did it after business trips, after bad weeks, after forgetting something he should have remembered, after nothing at all. Inside, the shop smelled cold and green, stems and water, eucalyptus, damp paper. A woman in an apron looked up from trimming roses. "Need help?" Marcus glanced at the buckets lined up along the wall. Tulips, hydrangea, ranunculus, white lisianthus. He did not know why he was there and disliked being caught inside the fact of it. "Something simple," he said. "For a birthday? Anniversary? No." The woman waited a beat, then nodded like she knew enough not to ask again. "How about these?" She pointed to a loose arrangement of white stock, pale peach roses, and greenery Marcus never bothered learning the names of. It looked tasteful, expensive without trying too hard. Fine. While she wrapped them, he checked his phone. No messages from Isabella. One from dispatch, one from Maya, asking if she could get picked up 40 minutes later because Jenna's mom had a thing after school. Marcus typed back, "We'll see." The florist handed him the bouquet in brown paper tied with a narrow ribbon. He paid, thanked her, and carried it back to the car. 30, he let himself into the house, with the flowers in one hand and the olive oil he had remembered to buy in the other. Isabella was in the kitchen unloading the dishwasher. She looked over, saw the bouquet, and gave him the smile he had expected before he walked in. Warm, a little surprised, slightly softened by being chosen. For me? Marcus set the olive oil on the counter. Who else? She laughed lightly and came toward him, taking the flowers from his hand. What did you do? Nothing. That usually means something. He watched her lift the paper to smell them. I was nearby. Well, she looked down at the arrangement again. They're beautiful. There was a pause where she might have kissed him on another day, in another version of things. Instead, she turned to find a vase. Marcus loosened his tie and stood at the island while she filled a glass cylinder with water, trimmed the stems badly with kitchen scissors, and arranged them with more enthusiasm than skill. She bit her lip when she concentrated. He had once found that endearing. Did your meeting go okay? She asked. Fine. With who? A partner. She glanced at him. Since when do you call people partners? Since I don't feel like giving you a full client list over lunch. She gave him a look that was half amusement, half warning. Okay. Jesus. He almost apologized out of habit. Instead, he opened the fridge and took out a bottle of water. By evening, the flowers were on the dining table. Maya barely looked at them. Isabella did, twice. At dinner, she was unusually gentle, as if the bouquet had reminded her of a version of the marriage she still knew how to perform inside. She asked Marcus if he wanted more chicken. Asked Maya about school without drifting toward her phone. She even touched Marcus's shoulder once while passing behind his chair, the contact brief and unthinking enough that for a split second his body responded before his mind did. Later, after dishes, Isabella went upstairs to shower. Marcus waited 5 full minutes after he heard the bathroom door close. Then he went into the bedroom, picked up her phone from the nightstand, and took it to his office. The room was dim except for the desk lamp. He shut the door, sat down, and opened the phone. His own laptop was already awake from sleep. He plugged in the small USB drive he'd taken from the back of a drawer that afternoon, an old promotional one from a conference, silver and anonymous. He opened the message thread again, the same rush of intimacy and request. Need and transaction, miss you, need 500. When can I see you? Don't be cold to me. You said you loved me, 8 months of it, maybe more if he kept digging. Marcus began taking screenshots. He worked methodically like he was reviewing shipment confirmations. Screen capture, scroll, hotel names, photos, money asks, pet names that turned ugly 2 texts later. He transferred each batch to the laptop, then to the USB, checking that the files opened before moving on. He did not rush. The bathroom pipes hissed faintly through the wall upstairs. Once he heard the shower turn off, then silence, and his hand paused over the screen. He listened. No footsteps yet. He kept going. By the time he finished, the folder on the USB held hundreds of images. Enough to give shape to the thing. Enough to prove it to someone else, if it ever needed proving. Enough to let him return later without relying on memory. He ejected the drive, slid it into the inside pocket of his desk bag, and cleared the recent transfer window from the laptop. Then he locked Isabella's phone, carried it back upstairs, and set it in its usual place on the nightstand with the charger angled just so beside it. When she came out of the bathroom, her hair was damp and twisted in a towel. She smelled faintly of steam and the citrus body wash she liked. "You're in here already?" she asked. Marcus was sitting in the chair by the window with a file open on his lap, one ankle crossed over the other. "Thought I'd finish something." She rubbed lotion into one arm, not looking at him. "You're going to work yourself into an aneurysm." "Probably not tonight." She gave a small, tired smile and dropped the towel from her hair. Wet strands fell over her shoulders. She reached for her phone without suspicion, checked the screen, then set it back down. Marcus watched that. Not her face, not whether guilt crossed it. Just the ease of the movement, the complete absence of fear. Then he looked back at the file in his hands. The plan had not become clear all at once. It had arrived in pieces, numbers at dawn, legal language before lunch, flowers on the table, screenshots saved to a drive no one knew existed. Separate actions, small enough to disappear inside a normal day. But now, sitting in the room while Isabella towel-dried her hair in front of the mirror, Marcus could feel that something had already shifted. He had started. And whatever came next would not happen by accident, the way a cold man ends things. At 7 in the morning, Marcus was already dressed. He sat on the edge of the bed in a navy suit and white shirt, his tie hanging loose around his collar, one end longer than the other. The bedroom curtains were still mostly drawn, but a thin blade of California morning had found its way through the gap and laid itself across the blanket. Isabella was just beginning to wake. She made a small sound. the kind people made when surfacing reluctantly, and rolled onto her back. One arm dragged across the sheet. Her hair was flattened on one side, mascara faintly smudged under one eye from the night before. For a second, she looked younger, not innocent, just unfinished. Marcus had placed her phone on the bed between them. Screen up, unlocked. The message thread was open. He did not speak when she first saw it. He watched her eyes move before the rest of her caught up. She looked at him automatically, then down at the phone, then back at him, as if some smaller explanation might still be available if she reached quickly enough. It wasn't. Explain it. Explain it, Marcus said. His voice sounded ordinary to his own ears. Not soft, not sharp, just level. Isabella stared at the phone. The color left her face so quickly it looked like a physical event. She pushed herself upright with both hands, but did not touch the device. On the screen, one of Liam's messages sat in the center like something pinned there, deliberately. I need 500 tonight. Don't start with me again. Below it, her answer. He's still up. I'll figure it out. Neither of them moved. 10 seconds went by, maybe more. Marcus let the silence sit where it was. He had spent half the night and most of yesterday imagining noise, denial, anger, frantic explanation. But the first thing that entered the room was just this, her breathing changing shape. When she finally made a sound, it came out broken and too small. Oh my God. Her hand went to her mouth, then to her chest, then back to the blanket, gripping it. She looked at him again, and what he saw there was not one emotion, but several arriving badly organized. Fear first, then shame, then the reflex to manage him, to search his face for which version of herself might still work. Marcus, go ahead. He said it so evenly that she blinked at him. Her eyes filled almost at once. Tears collected faster than they fell, making her look dazed. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... He waited. The sentence collapsed on its own. She pressed both hands over her face and started crying in the ugly, helpless way people did when they had not prepared to be caught. Her shoulders pulled in. The sound was wet, irregular, humiliating to witness. Marcus sat where he was and watched her without interrupting. He thought he might feel something clearer. Triumph, maybe, or disgust, sharp enough to steady him. Instead, there was mostly concentration. He wanted facts before this turned into atmosphere. Look at me, he said. She lowered her hands, still crying. Her cheeks were blotched pink already, and please don't... How much money did you send him? For a moment, she just stared. What? How much? Her eyes flicked to the phone, then away. Marcus, please, can we just... How much money did you send him? She inhaled shakily. I don't know exactly. He said nothing. That, more than anger, made her start talking. Not at first, not like a lot. He was having a hard time, and I thought it was temporary, and then it just... How much? She swallowed. Maybe... Marcus watched her try to decide which lie was survivable. Maybe what? A few thousand? He held her gaze. Her mouth trembled. She looked down at her own hands, at the twisted edge of the comforter in her fist, then back at him. 15, she whispered. He did not react quickly enough for her liking, and she rushed to fill the space. Not all at once, over time, over months, I can explain it. $15,000. I know how that sounds. Marcus almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. I'm pretty sure it sounds exactly like what it is. She flinched. The room was still dim, still too early for the house to be fully awake. From outside came the muted rush of a car passing on the street. Somewhere down the hall, the vent kicked on and pushed warm air into the room. The ordinariness of the sounds felt insulting. Isabella wiped under her eyes with the heel of her hand. It wasn't just money. No? No, she took in a breath that shook on the way in. I know what you think. Marcus looked at the phone, then at her. Do you? She stared at him, and now the crying shifted. Less pure panic, more pleading, more trying to make a case. You were never here, she said. Not really. You were in the house sometimes, but you were always somewhere else. Work, calls, emails, the office, the car. Whatever problem somebody else had that day, I was just... No, she stopped, swallowing. I was alone all the time. Marcus let that sit between them. He had known some version of that was coming. Not because it was false, because it was available. You were lonely, he said. Yes, and that made you send him $15,000. She shut her eyes briefly, frustrated now that he was refusing the emotional shape she wanted. It didn't start like that. How did it start? She looked away, toward the dresser, toward the half-open bathroom door, anywhere but him. I don't know. You don't know. I do know. She pressed her fingers to her forehead. It was stupid. He was nice to me. He noticed me. He listened when I talked. He made me feel like I wasn't... She stopped again. Marcus waited. Wasn't what? He asked. Her face tightened. I don't know. A lie, or not exactly a lie. A place she could not bear to name out loud because once named it would sound too vain, too thin, too pathetic even to her. He looked at the phone again. Messages, photos, 8 months of being noticed. Did you sleep with him? Marcus asked. She stared at him for a second, then nodded once. How many times? Marcus, how many? Her mouth opened, then closed. I don't know. Try. She looked wounded by the request itself. I don't know. A few, several. Why does that matter? He watched her carefully, and because if I'm going to sit here and listen to you cry, I'd like to know what exactly I'm listening to. That landed. Not like a slap, more like cold water. She drew her knees up under the blanket as if that might make her smaller. I'm sorry, she said again. But the sentence had changed. It was thinner now. Less apology, more exhaustion. Marcus picked up the phone from the comforter and held it out toward her. She took it automatically. Read that one, he said. She looked at the screen, then froze. It was one of the money exchanges. Liam irritated, demanding, barely bothering to sound affectionate anymore. Marcus, please. Read it. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Fine, Marcus said. I already did. He stood then, taking the tie from around his neck and draping it more neatly before beginning to knot it. In the mirror over the dresser, he could see her behind him on the bed, holding the phone like it might burn through her hands. Are you leaving? She asked. He kept his eyes on the tie. I have work. Her voice rose in disbelief. That's it? He tightened the knot and adjusted it once at the collar. No, that's just what I'm doing at 7:15 on a Tuesday. She pushed the blanket aside and got off the bed too fast. Her legs seemed unsteady. She was still in the pale blue sleep shirt she wore when she wanted to feel soft and expensive. The hem wrinkled, one shoulder slipping. She looked terrible. Real. Not composed enough for this house. You can't just do this and then leave. Marcus turned to face her. Do what? She stared at him, eyes red, breath unsteady. Say it like that. Ask me questions like I'm in some meeting. I'm telling you I'm sorry. And she stopped. Her chest lifted and fell once. And I made a mistake. The word hung there. Mistake. Marcus looked at her as if it belonged to somebody else's conversation. You were with him for 8 months. Tears spilled down her face again. I know. You gave him money. I know. You lied to me in this house, in front of Maya. At Maya's name, something tightened visibly in her face. I know. Marcus nodded once. That's not a mistake. She looked at him the way people did when they wanted you to choose a less exact word for what they had done. Something with edges sanded down enough to survive hearing. She said very quietly, I want to fix it. He said nothing. She came a step closer. Please. There it was, not the marriage, not him, the situation, the floor dropping out beneath her. I'll end it, she said. I can end it. Today, right now. I'll call him in front of you if you want. I'll block him. I'll do whatever you want. Marcus leaned down, picked up his watch from the dresser, and fastened it around his wrist. She watched every movement as if it were a verdict. I'll do therapy, she said. Couples therapy. Individual therapy. Whatever. I know I messed this up. I know I did. But please don't... She stopped there, too. Did not finish the sentence. Please don't leave me. Please don't tell Maya. Please don't take the life. He could almost hear all three. When he looked at her again, she was standing with her arms folded hard across herself. Not from modesty, but from cold or shock or some effort at containment that wasn't working. Do you want to stay? He asked. She blinked. What? In the house, in this marriage, here. He kept his tone flat. Do you want to stay or go? For the first time that morning, she looked genuinely confused. It was not the question she had prepared for. There was no anger in it to answer, no accusation to soften, no obvious opening for mutual pain. Just logistics placed in front of her too soon. Marcus, do you want to stay or go? I want to stay. Why? Her face crumpled again. Because this is my family. Marcus watched her a moment. It was not a false answer. It was not the whole answer either. And she stared at him, breathing through her mouth now, eyes darting between his face and the floor. Because I love you? He did not move. Something in his stillness seemed to frighten her more than shouting would have. I do, she said. I know it doesn't sound believable right now, but I do. Marcus slid his cuff under the watch strap and straightened it. All right. She stood there, waiting for more. When none came, she frowned through tears. All right, she repeated. You said you want to stay. Yes, then stay. She looked almost stunned. You're not asking me to leave? Marcus picked up his jacket from the chair by the window. I'm not throwing anyone out of the house at 7 in the morning. That's not what I meant. I know. He put the jacket on and smoothed the front with both hands. In another life, it might have been the beginning of a normal workday. Shirt, tie, watch, jacket, the faint smell of starch and dry cleaning. Downstairs, maybe coffee reheated, keys by the bowl near the door, traffic on 101 by 8. Isabella was still staring at him. "So that's it," she said again, but softer now, more afraid. Marcus looked at her over the knot of his tie. "No." The word was quiet. It changed the room anyway. She lowered herself back onto the bed as if her knees had failed in stages. The mattress dipped. She still held the phone. Her thumb was pressed along the edge so hard the knuckle had gone white. "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus picked up his briefcase. "Everything changes," he said. It was the nearest thing to a clean line the moment offered, and even as he said it, he disliked how finished it sounded. But he let it stand. Not because it was elegant, because it was true enough. He crossed the room and paused at the bedroom door. "Get some rest," he said. "You look awful." She stared at him, eyes wide and wet, not sure whether the sentence was care, cruelty, or habit too deep to stop. He went downstairs before she could ask. The family room was empty. Maya had already left for school. A cereal bowl sat in the sink with milk drying to a skin at the bottom. Her backpack was gone from the chair by the door. The house had the strange, stretched feeling of weekday mornings after everyone else had exited their scene. Marcus stood in the kitchen and poured the coffee left in the machine into a travel mug. It had gone burnt and flat. He drank it anyway. Upstairs, faint through the ceiling, he could hear Isabella moving, not steadily. Drawer, footsteps, silence. Then, a little later, crying again. Muffled this time, probably into a towel or pillow. The sound carried badly through the vents, just enough to exist. He picked up his keys, wallet, phone. Outside, the air was cool and already brightening toward another clean California day that would look from a distance like money had solved everything for everyone on the block. A landscaping truck rolled slowly past as Marcus backed out of the driveway. Across the street, a man in running gear bent to retie his shoe. 2 houses down, someone was unloading groceries from the back of a black SUV. Marcus drove toward the office. At the first long light on Middlefield, he put the car in park and called Reynolds. The lawyer answered on the 3rd ring. "Reynolds." "It's Bennett." A short pause. "Everything all right?" Marcus looked through the windshield at the red light glowing over the intersection. A cyclist passed in front of him. On the corner, a woman waited with a stroller and a coffee in the same hand, rocking the stroller absently with her foot. "Start the paperwork," Marcus said. Reynolds did not speak for a second. Then, "All right. Lock the joint credit cards, close the savings account, and transfer the balance into my separate account." Marcus kept his voice even, one hand resting on the wheel. "And I want the divorce petition drafted." "Filed?" "Not yet." Another beat. "Understood." Marcus watched the light. Cars moved through the cross street in a steady stream. Silver sedan, white Tesla, landscaping trailer. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just Palo Alto at 8:12 on a weekday, everybody on their way to the next manageable thing. "Anything else?" Reynolds asked. Marcus thought of the bedroom. Isabella on the bed with her own phone in her hand, crying into a silence he had left behind on purpose. He thought of $15,000. Of Maya drinking yogurt at the kitchen island yesterday morning without knowing what shape her house had already started taking. "No," he said. The light turned green. "That's enough for now." He ended the call and eased his foot onto the gas. His face, reflected faintly in the side window, looked calm enough to belong to a man headed into an ordinary workday. When the credit card was declined, 3 days after Marcus confronted her, Isabella stood in her closet and changed shirts twice before leaving the house. The first one was too soft, too much like she was trying to look fragile for an audience that wouldn't be there. The second made her look washed out. She chose a cream cashmere sweater in the end because it had always been reliable on bad days. It made her look expensive and rested even when she wasn't. She put on jeans, gold hoops, a little concealer under her eyes. Mascara, lip gloss. By the time she came downstairs, the house was empty. Marcus had left before 8. Maya had gone to school 20 minutes after that without much speaking. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee and the lemon counter spray the cleaning lady used on Thursdays. On the island sat a bowl of mandarins, a stack of unopened mail, and the florist's white arrangement Marcus had brought home 2 days earlier, the roses already starting to loosen at the edges. Isabella picked up her keys and told herself she was just getting out of the house. That was all. Not shopping exactly, just leaving. Just refusing to sit all morning in the same rooms where Marcus had gone cold in front of her and stayed that way. She drove to Stanford Shopping Center with the radio on low and changed stations 3 times because every song felt aimed at someone else. The parking lot was already filling with women in tennis skirts, Men on calls, nannies pushing expensive strollers, teenagers moving in pairs with coffee cups bigger than their wrists. It was a weekday, but not empty. Palo Alto was never empty. It just varied in what kind of money was visible. Inside Nordstrom, the air was cool and smelled faintly of perfume and leather and whatever they pumped through the vents to make spending feel clean. Isabella moved through handbags first, fingers brushing straps, buckles, chain hardware. She wasn't looking for anything in particular. She had never needed to. For 13 years, shopping had not been a decision so much as a reset. A way to move a mood from inside her body to outside it, where it could be bagged and carried and set down later on a chair in the bedroom. A sales associate in black appeared beside her with a practiced smile. "Anything I can pull for you?" "I'm just looking." The woman nodded and stayed close enough to be available without becoming pressure. Isabella picked up a tan leather shoulder bag, soft enough to fold in slightly where she held it. Simple. Expensive without screaming. 400 and something, maybe. She turned the tag over, then turned it back. "You can try it in the mirror if you want," the associate said. Isabella slung the bag over one shoulder and looked at herself in the long mirror by the column. Cream sweater, gold hoops, smooth bag, good hair. A woman who still looked like herself from the outside. "I'll take it," she said. At the register, she slid out her usual card without thinking. The associate inserted it, waited, then glanced up politely. It didn't go through. Isabella gave a short laugh. "That's weird. Try it again." The woman did. Same result. "Sometimes the chip reader here is ridiculous," Isabella said, already reaching into her wallet for another card. "Use this one." The second card failed faster. The associate's smile shifted. Not rude, not even noticeably different, unless you were the one watching for it, but thinner now. More procedural. "Would you like to try another form of payment?" Heat moved up Isabella's chest. She pulled out a third card, one Marcus barely used. "This one." The woman took it with the exact same polite face. Declined. For a second, Isabella just stared at the little screen angled toward the cashier, the bright block letters cleaner and more public than they needed to be. Around her, she could hear other people talking, a stroller wheel squeaking, tissue paper rustling at the next register. Somewhere nearby, a woman asking if a shoe came in navy. "I have cash," Isabella said too quickly. She opened her wallet. $63. 2 20s, a 10, 3 1s, loose change at the bottom she ignored. She felt the associate waiting. "Actually," Isabella said, smiling in a way that hurt her cheeks, "I'm going to think about it." "Of course." The woman set the bag aside without expression. Not unkind. Worse than unkind, maybe. Trained. Isabella took her wallet, slid the useless cards back in with fingers that were starting to feel clumsy, and walked out of the department without looking behind her. In the parking garage, the inside of her car smelled like old leather and the vanilla hand cream she kept in the console. She shut the door harder than necessary and sat with both hands on the wheel. Then she called the bank. The hold music came first. Piano and brushed drums. A male voice thanking her for her patience every 30 seconds in a tone that suggested patience was a character trait and not something being extracted from her by force. By the time a woman finally answered, Isabella was staring straight ahead at a concrete pillar painted with a faded red C. "Thank you for calling Wells Fargo Card Services. This is Melanie. How can I help you today?" "My cards are being declined," Isabella said. "There's obviously some kind of fraud block or something." "Okay, I can help with that. Can you verify the last 4 digits of the card you attempted to use?" Isabella did. Then another card. Then the address on file. The last deposit amount in the linked account, which she guessed wrong, once before remembering Marcus had moved money around at the start of the month. Melanie was quiet for a moment, typing. "All right," she said finally. "I'm seeing that these cards have been restricted at the request of the primary account holder." Isabella went still. "What does that mean?" "It means charges can't be authorized at this time." "No, I know what words mean. I'm asking why. I'm only able to see that the restriction was placed by the primary holder on the account, which is my husband." "Yes, ma'am." Isabella looked through the windshield at nothing. A man in sunglasses crossed 2 rows ahead carrying shopping bags. Somebody backed out too fast and braked when they saw him. "What about the checking account?" she asked. "The joint account." More typing. "I'm showing that account is closed." "What?" "It was closed 3 business days ago. Funds were transferred out." "To where?" "I'm not able to provide information beyond what's visible on your profile." Isabella gripped the phone tighter. "This is my account." "It's a joint account, ma'am. Changes can be made by the authorized primary." "The primary one," Isabella repeated. The woman on the line paused as if she had heard the change in Isabella's voice and wanted no part of where it might go. "Would you like me to connect you to branch support?" "No," Isabella said. "Too fast again." She ended the call before the woman could say anything else and sat in the car with the phone in her lap. For a second, she thought she might throw it. Instead, she opened her banking app. The checking account was gone. The linked card showed suspended. She tried Zelle, error. Tried Apple Pay, unavailable. Tried the savings login Marcus had once half set up for her and never properly explained. Access denied. Her face burned with a shame that had no one immediate to land on. Not just because the cards had failed, because this part had been true longer than she'd wanted to admit. She had never really known where anything was, not in a practical sense. Money came in, bills got paid, cards worked, the house functioned. She had called that marriage because calling it ignorance would have been beneath her. She dialed Marcus. Straight to voicemail. She hung up without leaving one, then texted, "Why aren't my cards working?" No response. She drove home with her chest tight and one hand cold around the wheel despite the sun already warming the windshield. At the house, she tried to open every financial app she could think of. PayPal, Venmo, Apple Wallet. One after another, failures or balances too low to matter. She pulled open the junk drawer looking for an old debit card she vaguely remembered using once for groceries when she'd left her wallet upstairs. It was expired. By noon, she had moved from anger into something uglier and harder to show even to herself. A kind of animal embarrassment. She called Marcus again. No answer. At 1:30, she texted again. "Did you lock my cards?" 2 hours passed. At 3:28, when the light in the kitchen had started to flatten and the flowers on the table looked tired, he finally replied, "I'm restructuring finances. Give it a few weeks." Isabella stared at the screen. Not, "I'm in a meeting." Not, "We'll talk tonight." Not even the courtesy of a lie that pretended this was temporary. She typed back, "You can't do this without telling me." She watched the bubble stay flat. No answer. She set the phone down so hard it slid across the island and knocked into the fruit bowl. That evening, Marcus came home at 6:40 with the dry cleaner draped over one arm and his phone still in his hand, finishing some calm conversation about a shipment delay as he came through the mudroom. Isabella was waiting in the kitchen. He saw her standing there and did not change expression. "Call me back once they confirm the dock time," he said into the phone. "Not before." He ended the call, set the phone face down on the counter, and hung the dry cleaning over the back of a chair. "What did you do?" Isabella asked. He looked at her, then at the stove. "Have you started dinner?" She let out a short, disbelieving breath. "Are you serious?" Marcus loosened his tie. "I asked a question." "You locked everything." He opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of sparkling water. "Not everything." "My cards don't work. The joint account is gone." He shut the fridge with his hip. "Yes." The calmness of it made her step closer. "You don't get to just do that." Marcus twisted the cap off the bottle. "Actually, I did." "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." The kitchen was bright and brutally tidy, all pale stone and stainless steel and the quiet hum of appliances that's designed to disappear. Isabella could see the flowers over Marcus's shoulder on the dining table, those same white roses beginning to brown at the outer petals. She hated them suddenly. "You're punishing me," she said. Marcus took a drink before answering. "I'm limiting your access to money." "For what?" He looked at her over the rim of the bottle. "You really want me to answer that question as if you don't know?" She folded her arms across herself. "You said I could stay. You are staying. This is insane." He set the bottle down. "You said you wanted to stay." I agreed. "That does not include funding whatever the hell you were doing." "I bought a bag." He gave the smallest nod. "Exactly. A bag." She laughed once, sharp and high. "I'm not asking you to buy me a car." "No, you just helped another man drain 15 grand out of this house." The sentence landed with a force that felt almost physical. Not because it was loud, because Marcus almost never spoke that directly. When he did, the words sat there afterward like objects nobody could pretend not to see. Isabella looked away first. Marcus pulled open a drawer and took out a folded envelope. He set it on the counter between them. She frowned. "What is that?" "Cash." She did not touch it. "For what?" "500 monthly." She stared at him. "Monthly. For groceries, gas, whatever actual household thing comes up that isn't already covered." She laughed again, but there was no humor in it now. Just disbelief struggling to stay above panic. $500? You won't need much. I'm paying the bills." "Marcus, this is ridiculous." "Maybe it's still happening." She pushed the envelope back across the counter with 2 fingers as if it were dirty. "I'm not taking an allowance." He looked down at the envelope, then back at her. "Call it something else. This is control." Marcus was quiet a second, then, "This is consequence." The word made her flinch the same way mistake had made him flinch days earlier. "I said I was sorry." He gave a short nod. "I heard you. And this is how you want to live, like this?" Marcus picked up the envelope and tucked it into the bowl beside the keys. "No. This is how we're living right now." Maya came in through the garage, a minute later with her backpack hanging off one shoulder, and stopped in the doorway when she saw both of them standing there. "Nobody texted me that dinner wasn't happening," she said too brightly. Marcus turned toward her at once, tone changing by half a degree. "Go upstairs, we'll call you." Maya looked from him to Isabella and back again. Her face closed the way it had started to lately, like shutters being drawn by practiced hands. "Okay," she said. She went upstairs without asking anything. They heard her bedroom door shut. For a moment, neither adult moved. Then Isabella said, lower now. "You're doing this in front of her." "I'm standing in my kitchen," Marcus said. "If you'd like to avoid scenes in front of Maya, I recommend not making one." Her eyes filled, infuriatingly. She hated that he could still do that to her, make her feel childish while he stayed composed. "You don't get to act like this is normal." Marcus picked up his bottle again. "Oh, it's not normal." He left her there and went upstairs to change. That night, after the house went quiet and Marcus shut himself in the office, Isabella sat on the edge of the bed with the lamp off and texted Liam. For a while, she only looked at the open thread. The old messages felt different now, almost embarrassing in their volume. Hearts, selfies, apologies, his complaints when she delayed, his little bursts of charm when he wanted something. She could still remember how it had felt when the phone lit up with his name. The stupid rush of being chosen. The relief of being seen before she had to become wife or mother, or the woman in charge of meal planning and birthday gifts and making the house look untouched by labor. She typed, "Do you have 500? Can I borrow it for a few days?" She stared at the message for a full minute before sending it. When it went through, the screen looked naked. She waited. No response for 20 minutes, then 40, then an hour. Finally, the bubble appeared. "Are you kidding?" That was all. Isabella looked at it, thumb hovering. She typed, deleted, typed again. "I'm serious, I need help." Sent. Nothing. She called once, it rang and went to voicemail. She did not leave one. 2 days later, she drove to his apartment in San Jose just after noon, telling Marcus by text that she was going to lunch with a friend. He did not answer, which in some ways felt worse than suspicion. The building was a low beige complex near a busier road than she liked, with sun-beaten railings and a patch of ornamental grass out front already going brown at the tips. She had hated it the first time she came. It smelled like old carpet and weed in the stairwell, and the parking spots were too narrow for her SUV. But later, the shabbiness had become part of the point, something outside her usual life, something that didn't ask her to be polished or appropriate or grateful. Now apartment 2B had a notice taped crookedly to the door. "Vacant manager." Isabella stood there for a second without understanding the word. Then she knocked anyway. Nothing. She knocked harder, hearing the hollow answer from inside. No television, no footsteps, no irritated hold on. The mat was gone. The cheap metal ashtray Liam used to keep on the landing was gone too. A woman from the neighboring unit opened her door halfway and looked out. "You looking for the guy who lived there?" Isabella turned. "Yeah." "He moved out." "When?" The woman shrugged. "Yesterday, day before, some guys came with a truck." "Did he leave a number?" The woman laughed a little, not cruelly, just at the idea. "Not with me." She closed the door again. Isabella stood on the landing with her purse slipping from her shoulder and the notice on the door lifting slightly in the breeze from the stairwell. Then she went back to the car. She sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and called him twice more, straight to voicemail. She opened her bank app one last time, even though she already knew. No joint account, no accessible cards. The one personal checking account Marcus had once insisted she opened years ago still existed, untouched and almost ceremonial. Balance, zero on. The zeros looked cleaner than they should have. Final. Insultingly neat. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel. After a while, she began to cry. Not with the hot, panicked tears from the bedroom days earlier. Not with the angry tears from the kitchen. This was slower and more humiliating. Her makeup stung at the corners of her eyes. Cars moved in and out of the lot around her. Somewhere, a leaf blower started up. A man in a white t-shirt carried 2 cases of bottled water into another building without looking toward her. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand, took out her phone, and texted Marcus. "I need to talk to you." He did not answer right away. She watched the screen, willing the dots to appear. 5 minutes later, they did. "I'll be home late tonight. Go to sleep." That was all. Isabella stared at the message until the screen dimmed in her hand. Then she looked up at the apartment building, at the blank second-floor landing where Liam's door stood shut, with somebody else's notice taped to it. And for the first time in a long while, maybe the first time in years, tomorrow did not arrive in her mind already furnished. The offer from a betrayer. At 5 o'clock, Marcus was already sitting in the back corner of a coffee shop in Mountain View. A cup in front of him he had no intention of drinking. The place was half empty in the way offices and cafes in that part of the Bay Area often were, between workday and evening, the hour when nobody had fully decided whether they were still being productive or had given up. A woman in scrubs sat near the window with a laptop open and her hair still pinned up from a shift. Two men in company fleeces stood by the pickup counter talking too loudly about a product rollout. The music overhead was soft and forgettable. Marcus had arrived 10 minutes early. He had chosen the table for the angle. From where he sat, he could see the entrance reflected in the glass pastry case and still keep his back to the wall. Habit, maybe, or theater. He was not sure anymore which parts of his behavior belonged to business and which now belonged to this. Liam came in at 5:03. Marcus knew him at once, though he had only ever seen him in photos and fragments before. Younger by at least 10 years, maybe more. Tall enough to believe height fixed things. Nike hoodie, black joggers, white and red Jordans that had been kept cleaner than the rest of him. A watch too big for his wrist. Hair cut carefully. The overall effect of someone trying to wear money rather than live inside it. He saw Marcus, hesitated for half a beat, then walked over without smiling. Mr. Bennett. Marcus did not stand. Sit down. Liam sat. He did not offer his hand. Marcus was grateful for that. Up close, he was not handsome in the way Marcus had imagined during the worst parts of the last week. That had almost been easier to picture. Some impossible younger man with a cleaner face and better instincts. Instead, Liam looked exactly like what he was. Someone who knew how to assemble the pieces of desirability cheaply and had learned that for some people, that was enough. Thanks for agreeing to meet, Liam said. Marcus looked at him a moment. What do you want? Liam leaned back in the chair as if they were there to discuss a car sale. 10,000! Marcus let the number sit. Around them, the coffee shop continued on. Milk steaming, door opening, closing. Somebody laughing once, too hard, at something that was not very funny. Marcus looked at Liam's face, trying to find whatever Isabella had mistaken for refuge. Kindness, maybe, if you were careless enough. Attention, definitely. The kind that locked on fast and made the rest of the room fall away. And why, Marcus asked, would I give you $10,000? Liam looked down briefly at the table, then back up. Because I can help you end this. Marcus did not move. Liam nodded once, like he was confirming the outline of a deal he had already rehearsed. One phone call. I call your wife. I say exactly what's true. I don't love her. I never did. It was money, mostly. You record it. Marcus's mouth moved very slightly, not enough to count as a smile. Mostly? Liam ignored that. You get it on tape. She hears it from me, not you. After that, she's got nothing left to hang on to. Marcus watched him. There it was. The audacity of it. Not only asking for money, but entering the situation as if he were some kind of service provider. A specialist in collapse. And you think that's worth 10,000? Liam shrugged. I think your time is worth something. I think clean evidence is worth something. I think a woman who feels cornered can get expensive fast. Marcus said nothing. Liam leaned forward a little, lowering his voice. Not for secrecy exactly, more for texture. Look, I know you're already moving money around. She told me enough before she stopped answering. If you're headed for a divorce, she can still make you miserable. She can drag things out, cry, lie, turn it into one of those weird moral wars people have in court, even when nobody cares. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. You seem familiar with the process. Liam gave a short smile. Familiar enough. Meaning? Meaning I know how this goes. Marcus kept looking at him. Liam picked up the paper sleeve from Marcus's unused cup and rolled it once between his fingers. You get proof she was sending money to another guy. You get proof the guy was using her. You get the right lawyer to frame it right. My lawyer already knows how to do his job. Great, Liam said. Then I'm making it easier. Marcus looked at Liam's hands. Clean nails. Slight nicotine staining on 2 fingers. A small, pale scar across the knuckle of the right thumb. Ordinary details. That was the problem with most betrayal. It came attached to hands and clothes and a voice. It came as a person who could sit across from you and ask for a number like he was quoting a rate. How many people have you done this with? Marcus asked. Liam's expression changed for the first time. Not shock, not offense. More like appreciation that the right question had finally entered the room. He gave a little laugh and sat back again. Enough. Enough what? Enough to know when it's over. Marcus let out a breath through his nose. That wasn't my question. Liam tilted his head. No. I know. He did not answer. Marcus looked past him toward the window where late-day light had begun turning gold against the parked cars outside. A woman in a fleece jacket was strapping a toddler into a car seat. Someone crossed the lot carrying a cardboard tray of drinks. It occurred to him, not for the first time. How obscenely normal the world remained while private lives were being dismantled in corners. He turned back. Did Isabella know? Liam's face gave away nothing for a second. Know what? That you were using her? A beat. Then Liam snorted very softly and looked down at the table. She knew enough. Answer the question. Liam met his eyes again. She knew when I needed money. She knew I asked. She knew I wasn't exactly Prince Charming. But people hear what they can live with. Marcus said nothing. Liam continued, more casually now, as if familiarity with this made him honest. Your wife isn't stupid. She just liked the version that let her keep going. Marcus held his gaze. Liam lifted one shoulder. Women like that, they don't need much. Just enough attention to make them feel less invisible. After that, they do a lot of the work themselves. There it was. Not merely the insult to Isabella. The category, women like that. The flattening ease of it. Marcus felt something cold move through him. Not outrage exactly, more a brief clean disgust that spread and settled. This was the man, this voice, this cheap fluency. Isabella had handed money and hours and parts of herself to this. She had rearranged her face in mirrors for him, hidden messages from him, moved through Marcus's house with this boy man in her bloodstream like a private stimulant. He looked at Liam's Jordans again and suddenly noticed a gray smear on the left toe where someone had tried and failed to wipe off old dirt. What makes you think I don't just walk out of here, Marcus asked, and leave you with nothing? Liam spread his hands. You can. He said it without bluff or panic, which almost made Marcus respect him for half a second. Then why are you here? Liam leaned in again, because I think you want this finished. Not messy, finished. Marcus did not respond. Liam's voice lowered another degree. And because I think part of you wants her to hear it. The sentence landed harder than Marcus expected. He kept his face still. Liam watched him carefully now, less cocky than before. Maybe he had sensed the line and knew not to lean too hard on it. I'm not trying to insult you, he said. I'm saying she won't let go clean unless something breaks in the right place. Marcus looked at him for a long time. It was possible, sitting there, to feel two different things at once. Revulsion, usefulness. The desire to throw the coffee in Liam's face and the equally strong desire to make him earn his ugliness one last time. 10,000 is absurd, Marcus said. Liam blinked once, very slightly. Negotiation. Good. Something cleaner. 7 then. Marcus shook his head. 5 after the call. Liam exhaled through his nose. Come on. Marcus looked at him without speaking. You have any idea what you're asking me to do? Liam said. Yes. Liam laughed once. No, I don't think you do. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Then maybe you should leave. Liam watched him, recalculating. Marcus could almost see the math. Rent, debts, exit routes, pride. How much this man believed he could still extract from a situation that had already turned against him. 7, Liam said again, but softer now, less certainty in it. 5. That's cheap. That's what you are. The line came out before Marcus decided to use it. Not elegant, not planned, more satisfying for that reason. Liam's face tightened for the first time. Just a flicker. Then it was gone. Marcus went on, voice level again. 5,000. You make the call. You say exactly what you just said to me, minus the performance. You disappear from my life permanently. Liam stared at him. And if I say no, he asked. Marcus looked at his hoodie, his watch, the corner of an unpaid life clinging to him, even here. Then I assume you found another way to stay afloat. For the first time since sitting down, Liam looked away first. He rubbed at the scar on his thumb with his index finger, thinking. When he looked back up, his expression had shifted from swagger to something more practical. After the call, he said, Yes, same day. If it goes the way you say it will. Liam gave a short breath of laughter. You really are a businessman. Marcus said nothing. Liam nodded once. Fine. He held out his hand. Marcus looked at it. The fingers were long, the knuckles narrow, a silver ring on the index finger that tried too hard. The same hand, perhaps, that had held Isabella's jaw, texted her at 1 in the morning, taken cash from her purse or wallet, or whatever absurd route they had settled into. The same hand that now wanted to close a deal. Marcus took it anyway. Liam's grip was dry and brief, not submissive, not strong either. Transactional. When they let go, neither man said anything for a second. Then Marcus asked, When? Liam leaned back. Tomorrow night. At what point does she answer calls from you now? Liam shrugged. If she still thinks I'm the rescue, anytime. Marcus took out his phone and opened the Notes app. You'll text me first. Then you call when I tell you. Liam nodded. And if you go off script? Liam smirked a little. You mean if I improvise? I mean, if you get clever. Liam looked amused by that. I'm not trying to be clever. I'm trying to get paid. Marcus slid the phone back into his pocket. Good. They sat there a moment longer with nothing left to negotiate. Outside, evening had deepened to shade. The men in fleece vests were gone. The woman in scrubs had packed up. The barista behind the counter was wiping down the pastry case with a rag that left streaks until it didn't. Liam stood first. "So that's it?" Marcus looked up at him. "That's it." Liam pushed his chair in with one foot. "For what it's worth," he said, "I didn't come after her. Not really." Marcus almost smiled at the uselessness of the distinction. "Get out." Liam gave a tiny nod like respect or mockery or just closure and walked away. Marcus stayed where he was for another minute, long enough for Liam to leave the cafe, long enough for the bell above the door to stop echoing in his head. Then he got up, left cash for the coffee he had not touched, and walked out to the parking lot. In the car, the air had gone stale in the hour he'd been inside. He started the engine and sat with both hands on the wheel without pulling out. His phone buzzed once. A text from Liam. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m., don't be late with my money." Marcus looked at it, then locked the screen. He drove south with traffic thickening around him. The sky over the valley, already turning that thin metallic blue California evenings sometimes took on when the heat had been mild. Red brake lights gathered and released. SUVs, Teslas. A delivery van with half the back panel dented in. Lives moving in parallel, each sealed inside its own heated private version of necessity. At a light near shoreline, Marcus picked up his phone again and deleted the message thread from Liam. The screen went blank. For a second, he kept holding it. The thought came then, not dramatically, not as guilt exactly, more as a narrow crack of light where there had been none before. What am I doing? He sat with that for one breath. Then another. He could still leave it. He knew that. Drive home, tell Reynolds to file. Let the legal process do its slow, expensive work. Let Isabella cry, negotiate, disintegrate by inches in the ordinary way betrayed marriages did. There were cleaner versions of revenge, more respectable ones. The light changed. A horn sounded behind him, brief and impatient. Marcus put his foot on the gas. She deserves it, he thought. The sentence arrived hard and flat, and though some smaller part of him recoiled from the simplicity of it, he pressed forward anyway. By the time he pulled into the driveway, the house was already lit from inside. He came in through the kitchen and stopped. Isabella was standing at the stove, in jeans and one of Maya's old oversized sweatshirts, her hair tied back badly, a phone propped up against the utensil crock with a YouTube video paused mid-frame. Chopped onions sat on a cutting board. A pan hissed softly on the burner. Something with garlic and tomatoes hung in the air. Not terrible, not great, but unmistakably homemade in a house that usually ran on habit, prepared food, Marcus grilling on weekends or takeout disguised on plates. She turned at the sound of the door and gave him a small, strained smile that did not quite hold. "You're home." Marcus set his keys down by the bowl. "I can see that." Her smile flickered, then reassembled itself. "I'm making dinner." He looked at the stove, the open pasta box. The video still paused on a woman's manicured hand stirring sauce. "That appears to be true too." Isabella tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I know it's probably not amazing." He said nothing. She gestured weakly toward the phone. "I've been learning." Marcus loosened his tie. "From YouTube." A little color came into her face. Shame, maybe, or irritation at being seen too clearly. "Yeah," she said, "from YouTube." He looked at her for a second longer than kindness required. She had been crying at some point earlier. He could tell from the slight puffiness under her eyes, even with makeup on. But she had also tried. The onions were cut unevenly. One burner was on too high. There was flour on the counter for no reason he could detect. The whole scene carried the awkward seriousness of someone attempting usefulness in a language they had never really learned. "Where's Maya?" he asked. "Upstairs. She said she has homework." Marcus nodded once and set his briefcase by the wall. At dinner, Isabella served pasta into bowls too carefully, twisting it with tongs like presentation might compensate for uncertainty. Maya came down, looked at the table, at the candle Isabella had lit as if that might make the effort seem less desperate, and sat without comment. They ate. The pasta was overcooked. The sauce was too sweet. The chicken, sliced on top as if that made the dish more substantial, had gone dry. Marcus chewed, swallowed, and kept his face neutral. Isabella watched him once, then stopped watching. Maya ate more than Marcus expected. Not because it was good, maybe. Because somebody had made something and the rules of the house had become harder to read. "This is new," Maya said finally. Isabella gave a short laugh. "I know." "It's fine," Maya said in the tone teenagers used when trying not to wound someone too directly. "Thanks." Marcus kept eating. He did not praise it. He did not criticize it. He asked Maya about a quiz, asked if she needed a ride tomorrow, reached for water. The ordinary mechanics of dinner moved around the center of the table without touching it. Across from him, Isabella sat a little straighter every time he spoke to Maya, as if listening for proof that some part of the house still functioned under rules she recognized. When he did not speak to her, she lowered her eyes to her plate and took another bite of the pasta she had taught herself to make that afternoon from a stranger on a screen. Marcus finished first. He set his fork down and folded his napkin beside the bowl. "Thanks," he said to no one in particular. Then he stood and took his plate to the sink. Behind him, the room stayed quiet. Tomorrow at 8, Liam would call. And tonight, in the bright kitchen of the house, Isabella still believed she might be able to stay inside. Marcus stood at the sink with the taste of oversweet sauce still in his mouth and felt the first faint edge of something he did not want to name. The last call. On Saturday night, Marcus found Isabella in the family room folding clean dish towels that did not need folding. She was sitting on the edge of the sofa with a small stack beside her, smoothing each one over her knee before folding it into thirds. The television was on mute. Some home renovation show moved bright people through a bright kitchen she was not watching. The house had that strained weekend quiet it had settled into lately, the kind that made every sound too legible. The ice maker dropping cubes into the freezer bin, Maya moving around upstairs, the dryer thumping in the laundry room. Marcus stood in the doorway for a second. Isabella looked up. She had on jeans and a pale blue sweater and no jewelry except small gold studs. Her hair was pulled back. She looked thinner than she had 2 weeks ago. Though maybe that was only what fear did to a face when it stopped being intermittent and moved in fully. "What?" she asked. Marcus took his phone from his pocket. "Someone wants to talk to you." Her hand stopped on the towel. "Who?" He didn't answer. He crossed the room, set the phone on the coffee table, and tapped the screen. The video call connected almost at once. Liam's face appeared under bad apartment lighting, yellow and flat. He was sitting somewhere cramped, maybe a kitchen or the corner of a room not meant to be seen. White wall, cheap cabinet behind him. Hoodie again, different color. Same posture, that careless half-slouch that passed for ease when men were still young enough to think sloppiness could read as indifference. Isabella went still. Not the kind of stillness that can be mistaken for calm. The body's refusal to move while the mind fails to keep up. "Hi, Bella," Liam said. The towel slipped from her hands to the floor. "And what?" she said. Marcus didn't sit. He stood just behind the coffee table, close enough to reach the phone if he needed to. He had already turned on the recording app on his own phone, still in his jacket pocket. The small red waveform moved silently against the fabric. Isabella stared at the screen as if looking harder might change what she was seeing. "Liam?" Liam gave a short smile that did not survive long enough to become warmth. "Yeah." She stood up too fast, one hand going to the back of the sofa for balance. "How are you? Why are you calling here?" Her eyes flicked once toward Marcus, then back to the screen. Something pale and quick passed through her face. Fear, maybe, but not yet understanding. Not all the way. Liam leaned back in his chair on the screen. "Thought we should clear some stuff up." "Clear what up?" Her voice had gone thin. "Where have you been?" He looked almost bored by the question. "Busy." "Busy?" She laughed once, a sound already fraying. "You disappeared." Marcus watched her shoulders rise, watched her body lean very slightly toward the table before catching itself, as if some part of her still believed moving closer might restore private rules to a public humiliation. Liam glanced past the camera, then back. "Look, Bella, don't make this bigger than it is." The room seemed to tighten. Isabella said, "What are you talking about?" Liam rubbed at his jaw with 2 fingers. "I'm talking about how this went. Me and you. It was fun. That's all." For a second, she didn't react. The sentence was too crude, maybe too stripped of the language she had used to survive it. Then her face changed. "Stop," she said. Marcus could hear the blood moving in his own ears, though not loudly, more like distant weather. He had imagined this scene enough that parts of it now felt pre-remembered. Her disbelief. Liam's flatness. The way reality, once spoken plainly, sounded less dramatic than it did in the mind and more brutal for that reason. Liam went on, "You knew what it was." "No," she shook her head once hard. "No, I didn't." "Come on." "No," she took a step toward the table. "No, you don't get to do that." Liam looked at her through the screen with the expression of a man already half out the door of a motel room. "Bella, I asked you for money. Repeatedly. That's not... And you gave it to me." Her mouth opened and stayed open a second too long. Marcus watched the exact moment the line failed. The place where she had maybe expected Liam to lie more kindly, to preserve some smaller version of what she had bought from him even now. He didn't. That was the point. And Marcus, standing there in his own house, felt something cold and unpleasant inside him answer to the precision of it. Isabella's voice dropped. Why are you saying this? Liam shrugged. Because it's true. She looked at Marcus again, then really looked. It was the first time since the call started that she seemed to understand he had not only arranged contact, he had structured the room, her, the angle of the phone, the silence, himself standing behind it all, not intervening. Marcus, she said. He did not respond. On the screen, Liam gave a little exhale through his nose. You want the rest? Isabella turned back to him as if forced. No, I never loved you. Her face folded. I never said, You said enough. Liam lifted one shoulder. I said what worked. She made a sound then, low and wounded, not yet a sob. Just the sound of impact registering, before pain learns how to perform itself. Liam kept going. Marcus had told him not to embellish. Had told him in the parking lot after their meeting that if he got theatrical, the deal was off. Whether because he respected the instruction or simply didn't know how to be dramatic in any convincing way, Liam now spoke with the blunt, tired rhythm of a man discussing a bad lease. You weren't special, he said. I had 3-4 women like you at different points. You were just easier than most. Isabella shook her head slowly, eyes fixed on the screen as if refusing blink by blink might undo the sentence. That's not true. Liam's mouth twisted. Bella, you sent me money when I barely had to ask. What do you want me to call that? Tears had started spilling now, but she wiped them angrily, as if crying in front of him was a second humiliation layered over the first. You told me... I told you what you wanted. She took one step backward as if the room itself had shifted under her feet. Marcus did not move. Liam leaned closer to his camera, face momentarily larger and uglier in the frame. You really need me to spell it out? You were useful, that's all. That did it. Isabella turned toward Marcus so fast the motion looked painful. Did you do this? She demanded. He said nothing. Did you set this up? Marcus looked at her and still did not answer. Her breathing had gone ragged. Did you pay him? Liam laughed quietly on the screen. That's the part you care about? Shut up, she snapped at him, then back to Marcus. Did you pay him? Marcus reached down, picked up the phone from the coffee table, and held it a little closer to her. That was his answer. She stared at him as if he had struck her. On the screen, Liam said, You want honesty, Bella? Here it is. I never loved you. I never planned to. You were a good arrangement. Better than most, actually. Marcus saw Isabella's hand start to shake before she seemed to feel it. She clutched that hand with the other, pressing hard enough to whiten the knuckles, and looked between Marcus and the phone like she could not decide which betrayal had the right to wound more. Liam's voice kept coming. You made it easy. You wanted attention. I gave you attention. You wanted to feel different. I told you what you needed. That's not my fault. She whispered, Please stop. Liam didn't. You know how many women do this? Married, lonely, bored, all of them thinking they're the one exception because somebody younger looks at them like they still matter. You were just a... Stop. Yeah, the one who paid the longest. Stop. He kept talking. That was when she screamed. Not a word at first, just sound. Sharp and raw enough that Marcus felt it move over his skin. Then, Shut up! She snatched the phone from his hand and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall beside the bookshelves with a hard, cracking pop and dropped to the hardwood face down. The screen spidered black instantly. For half a second, there was still audio. Liam's voice, distorted and tinny from the floor, then nothing. Silence came down hard after that. Upstairs somewhere, Maya's bedroom door opened, then closed again. Isabella stood in the middle of the room with both hands open at her sides, fingers curled, chest heaving. Marcus could see the pulse in her throat. Her face had changed in a way he had not seen before. Not just crying, not shame, something more complete. A human structure giving way all at once while the body stayed upright for a few stunned seconds longer out of habit. Then she folded, not elegantly. Her knees buckled unevenly and she dropped to the floor beside the coffee table, one hand catching herself badly, the other going to her mouth as if she might be sick. But no sound came out at first, only air. Then the sobs started, and they were almost silent too, the body trying to cry and failing to organize itself around the task. Marcus crossed to the broken phone and picked it up. The glass had split across the center in a dark, branching crack. The frame had dented slightly at one corner. He turned it over once, saw only his own blurred reflection in the ruined screen, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. Isabella was on her knees now, bent forward, one hand on the rug. Her shoulders jerked with each breath. She looked less like a woman betrayed than someone who had been stripped in public and not yet found out how to cover herself. Marcus stood over her and heard dimly the dryer buzz from the laundry room. The ordinary house continuing. He said, Do you want to hear the recording? She lifted her head. Mascara had smeared under both eyes. Her mouth was open. Her face had gone blotchy and drained at the same time. What? The recording, Marcus said. If you need to hear it again. For a second, he thought she had not understood him. Then understanding arrived, and she stared at him, the way people stared at things they had no language left for. You recorded it. He looked down at her. Of course I did. A fresh wave of tears broke over whatever remained of her composure. She shook her head once, like refusal could still matter. She stopped to drag air in. You're sick. Marcus said nothing. You're sick, she repeated louder now, the words thick and breaking. You're a monster. The sentence hung there. He had imagined hearing it before. In some versions, it had sounded melodramatic. In others, deserved. In the room itself, with Isabella on the floor and the broken phone in his pocket, and Liam's voice still lingering faintly in Marcus's head, it sounded almost tired. Not false, just too small for the architecture now sitting around it. Maybe, Marcus said. She looked up at him, stunned that he had not defended himself. Then he heard himself say the next line before like he had entirely chosen it. But you're the one who gave the monster a reason to wake up. The words landed and stayed. Too clean, some part of him thought immediately. Too finished. But the damage was done. Isabella recoiled as if the sentence had been something thrown. Get away from me, she whispered. Marcus looked at her for a moment longer. There was no victory in the room. He had planned this too carefully to miss that once it arrived. The scene had shape, yes. Finality. The illusion had been killed exactly where he intended it to die. Liam was finished. Isabella knew it. Marcus knew it. No one in the house would ever again be able to pretend there had been anything tender on the other side of those messages. And still the dominant feeling was not triumph. It was a kind of cold vacancy with her sobbing at the center of it. He turned and walked out of the family room. Behind him, Isabella started crying louder. Not calling after him, not asking him to stay. Just the uninhibited, broken crying of someone who no longer had an audience left to manage. It echoed strangely through the open plan downstairs, into the kitchen, up toward the staircase. Marcus climbed the stairs without hurrying. At the top landing, he passed Maya's door. Closed, light under it. No sound. In the bedroom, he shut the door and sat on the edge of the bed without taking off his jacket. The room smelled faintly of Isabella's lotion and clean cotton, and the ghost of the perfume she had stopped wearing every day after Marcus cut off the cards. Through the floor, he could still hear the shape of her crying below, blunted now by distance and drywall. He took out his phone and opened the recording. For a second, he only looked at the file name and duration. Then he pressed play. Liam's voice came first, flat and cheap through the speaker. Bella, don't make this bigger than it is. Then Isabella's. What are you talking about? Then Liam again. Then the break in her. Then the scream. Even recorded, it made the hair along Marcus's arms lift. Not because it was loud, because of how naked it was. No performance left in it, no leverage. He stopped the recording before the end. The room fell quiet at once, except for the faintest remaining sound from downstairs and the soft tick of the ceiling fan chain touching the glass light fixture as the blades turned. Marcus looked at the dark screen in his hand. I won, he thought. The sentence appeared with no satisfaction attached to it. He set the phone face down on the nightstand and sat there a while longer in the dim bedroom, listening to the house hold what he had done. Somewhere below him, Isabella was still crying. Upstairs across the hall, his daughter was behind a closed door. On the bed beside him, the comforter lay smooth and turned down on Isabella's side, as if the night might still unfold according to the old habits of a marriage. Marcus stared at the floor. He had won. So why, sitting there in the room he still shared with the woman he had just finished breaking, did the victory feel so much like empty space? What Marcus lost. 3 weeks after the call, Marcus sat in Reynolds' office and watched Isabella read the divorce papers without turning a page too fast. The office was cooler than it needed to be. The air vent above the bookshelves pushed a steady low stream across the room, enough to lift one corner of the yellow legal pad on Reynolds' desk every few seconds. Outside the window, late morning light lay flat over Palo Alto, clean and expensive and indifferent. A man in a blue button-down crossed the parking lot below with a coffee in one hand and his phone in the other, moving with the unhurried purpose of somebody whose life had not come apart in installments. Isabella sat in the chair opposite Marcus in a cream blouse and dark jeans, her hair pulled back low at the nape of her neck. No rings, no bracelets, no makeup except concealer under her eyes and something on her mouth that had already worn off. She had become sparer in the last weeks, less arranged. Not careless exactly, just no longer spending energy where it wouldn't buy anything. Reynolds had placed the packet in front of her and gone quiet. Marcus sat beside the window, one ankle on the opposite knee, and watched her read each page with a concentration that would once have surprised him. She did not skim. She did not ask Reynolds to summarize. She read line by line, one hand holding the top corner of the paper, thumb resting lightly at the margin as if her own name might alter if she didn't keep physical contact with it. Initial support payment, $50,000. No claim to the business. No claim to the investment accounts. No ongoing spousal support. Temporary occupancy terms already concluded. Signatures required here, here, and here. The settlement was clean. That was what Reynolds had called it. Clean enough to keep it from turning into a year-long war. Clean enough that Marcus could tell himself he was being fair. $50,000 was not nothing. It was more than enough for a person who knew how to live inside numbers. Enough to rent a place, regroup, start over without calling herself destitute in front of other people. It had also been a number he could survive without feeling it too much. Isabella turned another page. Marcus could hear the paper against paper, the soft, dry sound of legal language becoming fact. When she reached the final signature page, she didn't pick up the pen right away. She set both hands flat on the desk and looked down for a second. Then she lifted her eyes, not to Reynolds, but to Marcus. "I know I was wrong," she said. Her voice was level, not gentle, not theatrical, just tired of waste. Reynolds looked down at his notes, suddenly very interested in not being inside the marriage he was being paid to dissolve. Marcus held her gaze, and that's a start. One side of her mouth shifted, not enough to become a smile. "You still do that." "Do what?" "Talk like there's a right answer somewhere, and if I fail the wording, I fail the whole thing." Marcus said nothing. Isabella looked at the papers in front of her again, then back at him. "I know I broke it," she said, and "I know I did, but you don't get to sit there and act like you were some good man who got ruined by a bad wife." Reynolds shifted almost imperceptibly in his chair and remained silent. Marcus rested one hand on the arm of his seat. "I didn't say that." "No," Isabella said. "You never say things straight when they make you look bad." The old instinct rose in him. To correct tone, to redirect, to make the conversation factual and therefore manageable. But this was not their kitchen. Not one of those late-night fights that ended with him sleeping well and her still upset in the morning. This was the office where their marriage was being turned into a file. He said, "And then say it straight." She looked at him for a moment, as if deciding whether the sentence was real permission or another trap. Then she said, "You made our marriage feel like a business I worked in for free." The room went very still. Outside, a siren went by somewhere far off and was gone. Marcus almost answered immediately, but something in her face stopped him. Not the accusation itself, the lack of heat in it. She wasn't trying to win the moment. She was simply no longer spending energy cushioning the truth to make it easier for him to hear. "For 13 years, she went on, I didn't buy anything expensive without asking first. I knew exactly what mood you'd be in if I spent too much. I knew when to bring something up and when not to. I knew how to make a purchase sound practical enough for you to approve it." Marcus felt Reynolds not looking at him. "That's not fair," Marcus said. "Isn't it?" "No," she gave a small shrug. "Maybe not by your standards." A line of irritation moved through him, familiar enough to almost feel like relief. "We had a household. We had a kid. We had responsibilities, and I handled them. You controlled them. I paid for them." "There," Isabella said quietly. "That." Marcus leaned back slightly. "You're rewriting this." "Am I?" Her eyes were dry. That was the thing that unnerved him more than if she'd come in crying. The tears were gone now. What remained had edges. "I told you I was lonely," she said. "More than once. I told you I felt like I was disappearing in that house. I told you I didn't know what my life was outside being your wife and Maya's mom, and every time you gave me the same answer." Marcus knew the answer before she said it, because hearing it in her voice made it obvious. She said, "Go shopping, take a trip, join something, hire help, buy whatever you want. You always turned it into a budget line." He opened his mouth, then stopped. Not because she was entirely right, because she was right enough to make defense sound childish. "You could have said it differently," he said after a moment. She laughed once under her breath. "I tried saying it softly. I tried saying it nicely. I tried saying it on vacations, in kitchens, in the car, in bed. You heard inconvenience every time." Marcus looked at her. Some part of him wanted to say that what she had done canceled all lesser complaints. That betrayal should not earn revisionist rights. That loneliness did not justify deception, money, another man, months of lies in his house. All of that remained true. It just no longer covered everything. Isabella picked up the pen. "I don't blame you for ending it," she said. "I don't even blame you for cutting me off." She glanced down at the signature line. "I just wish we had learned how to love each other before we learned how to punish each other." Then she signed. Her name went down in one controlled motion. She turned the pages where Reynolds pointed and signed again, then again. At the bottom of the last page, she placed the pen down carefully, almost politely, and sat back. Reynolds gathered the papers into a neat stack and said, "I'll have copies sent by end of day." Isabella stood. For 1 second, Marcus thought she might say something else to him, something private after all the formal sentences were done. She didn't. She picked up her bag, slid the strap over her shoulder, and looked at him with an expression too exhausted to be called angry. "We were bad at this," she said. Then she left. The office door clicked shut behind her. Marcus stayed where he was. Reynolds cleared his throat once and began arranging signatures with the quiet efficiency of a man who understood that endings rarely improved if anyone tried to summarize them. "You did the right thing settling early," he said after a moment. Marcus looked at the closed door. "Did I?" Reynolds paused, perhaps wise enough to understand the question wasn't really legal. "In my line of work," he said, "those are usually the only kind I'm asked to answer." Marcus gave a short nod and stood. By the time he got home, the house felt larger than it had 3 weeks ago. Isabella had moved out the previous Friday. Not dramatically. No slammed doors, no moving truck timed for maximum visibility. She had taken clothes, toiletries, books she actually read, 2 framed photos of Maya, the ceramic bowl from the art fair that had once been too expensive for what it was. The emptiness she left behind was specific. Not absence in general, but small missing weights. A bathroom drawer that slid too easily. Half a closet. The chair in the bedroom corner now used only to collect Marcus's jackets. He found Maya in the family room curled into one end of the sofa with her knees up, laptop open, headphones around her neck instead of on her ears. A textbook lay face down beside her. She looked up when he came in, then immediately looked back at the screen. Signed, Marcus said. He heard how flat it sounded as soon as it was out, like a status update from work. Maya clicked something on the laptop without reading it. "I know." He set his keys in the bowl by the door. "How?" She called Grandma from the kitchen before she left. Maya kept her eyes on the screen. Walls are thin. Marcus stood there a moment, then crossed the room and sat in the chair opposite the sofa instead of beside her. Near enough for conversation. Not presumptuous. "I know you're angry with me," he said. Maya's fingers stopped over the keyboard. When she turned to look at him, it was the first time in days she had done it directly. Her face had sharpened lately. Not thinner exactly, just less willing. "Do you feel better now?" she asked. Marcus frowned slightly. About what? About winning. The word landed in the room and stayed there. Marcus said, "That's not what this was." Maya looked at him as if deciding whether to bother pretending she believed that. "Isn't it?" "Your mother betrayed me." "I know." The speed of the answer surprised him. "I'm not stupid," and she said, "I know what she did." Marcus sat back a fraction. Maya pulled one knee tighter against her chest. "I'm not defending her." "It sounds like you are." "No," she said, and now there was something rougher in her voice. "I'm saying she was wrong, and you were still awful." He felt that physically, though it would have been hard to say where. "Maya." "No," she shook her head. "When you don't get to do that thing where you say my name like I'm being dramatic." Marcus went quiet. The afternoon light through the back windows made stripes on the rug. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator motor clicked on. The whole room seemed arranged to make voices carry farther than intended. Maya stared at him with the same Bennett eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, and hated, in that second, how much younger and more exposed they looked in her face. "You were never here," she said. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I was working," he said finally. "I know." She nodded like the phrase bored her. "That's all you ever say." "That's because it's true." She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You think true makes it enough?" He didn't answer. Maya looked down at the seam of the sofa cushion and ran one fingernail along it. "Do you know I used to wish you'd lose your job?" Marcus stared at her. She kept looking at the cushion. "Not like forever, just for a while. So you'd have to stay home, so maybe you'd sit in the kitchen when I got back from school. Or actually come to one of my orchestra things without checking your phone in the parking lot." Something inside his chest shifted. Not dramatically, not in the broad cinematic way pain was described. More like a structure taking weight it had been built to ignore. "Maya," he said again. But this time there was no correction in it. Only her name. She looked up. "I wanted to see you," she said. "That's all." Marcus sat very still. He could have defended himself. Listed the tuition checks, the mortgage, the vacations, the braces, the laptops, the life. He could have said what fathers like him always said when cornered by the emotional math they had outsourced. "I did it for you." But sitting there across from his daughter, he understood with a sudden, humiliating clarity that the sentence would only prove her point. Money had always been his evidence. Presence had been everybody else's problem. Maya set the laptop aside and stood up. "I'm going to study upstairs." He looked at her. "We're not done talking." She slung the headphones around one wrist. Maybe you are. I'm not. Then she left the room and went up the stairs without hurrying, without slamming anything, which somehow made it worse. Marcus sat in the family room alone. From upstairs came the sound of her bedroom door closing. Not hard, final enough. He stayed there until the sunlight moved off the rug. A year later, he stood in front of a small flower shop in San Jose and told himself he had only happened to be driving by. It was a bad lie, even before he fully formed it. The shop sat on a quieter street than the ones Marcus usually used, tucked between a tailor and a narrow cafe with 2 metal tables out front. The sign above the window was simple, hand-painted, the lettering not quite professional enough to look expensive. Buckets of cut flowers stood inside the front glass. Sunflowers, lisianthus, roses, eucalyptus, a spill of yellow billy buttons in a white ceramic vase near the register. The door was propped open with a brick, and the late afternoon air carried damp green smells out onto the sidewalk. Marcus sat in his car with the engine off. He had not seen Isabella in 9 months, not properly. There had been the occasional school thing with Maya, an exchange of logistical texts, one accidental sighting in a grocery store parking lot where she had been loading potted herbs into the trunk of a Honda he didn't recognize. Each time they had passed through the same shared air without attempting much more than civility. Now she stepped out of the shop carrying a metal watering can. For a moment, Marcus didn't recognize her. She was thinner than before, yes, but not diminished. Sun had touched her face and arms. Her hair was shorter, cut just above the shoulders in a way that seemed less styled than practical. She wore jeans, old sneakers, and a faded green t-shirt with the shop's name printed small over one breast. There was dirt on one knee. A pencil was tucked behind her ear. She set the watering can down by the buckets outside and glanced toward the street. Saw him. Even from across the windshield and the glass and the year between them, he could see the surprise move through her. Then she walked toward the car. Marcus got out before she reached him. Marcus? He put one hand in his pocket. Hi. She looked at him, then at the shop, then back at him with the faintest trace of amusement already gathering at one corner of her mouth. What are you doing here? He knew how ridiculous the truth would sound. I drove 20 miles because Maya said you were doing well and I wanted to see whether well had a face. Instead, he said, I was nearby. That made her smile properly, if only for a second. Were you? He exhaled once through his nose. No. She nodded as if that was easier. Okay. The silence that followed was not tense, just unpracticed. Up close, she looked different in ways that had nothing to do with weight or clothes. Less arranged around being observed. Less ready to make herself into the version of a woman the moment asked for. She looked tired in some permanent adult way, but peaceful too, which was harder for Marcus to account for. Do you want to come in? She asked. He looked toward the open door. If that's okay. It's just flowers, she said, not a trap. Inside, the shop was cooler. The front cooler hummed softly against one wall. Work tables in back held ribbon, shears, strips of craft paper, a half-finished arrangement in a blue ceramic bowl. A radio played low from somewhere out of sight. Some old singer neither of them commented on. Isabella moved behind the counter and set the watering can down. Coffee? She asked. Marcus almost said no out of reflex, then sure. While she filled a kettle in the sink behind the work table, he looked around. There were photographs clipped to a corkboard, customer orders in neat handwriting, a calendar with delivery days circled, a dusty little jar of wrapped candies by the register. The place did not feel aspirational. It felt used, real. That, more than anything, unsettled him. Maya said you might come by eventually, Isabella said, without turning around. Marcus looked at her. She did? She said you asked too many questions about the place for someone who didn't care. He let that sit. The kettle clicked on. Isabella reached up to move the pencil from behind her ear to the counter. The motion was small, familiar, and unfamiliar at once. How are you? He asked. She glanced over her shoulder at him. That depends who's asking. Fair. She gave the smallest shrug. I'm okay. The word might once have irritated him. Too vague. Too female, in the dismissive way he used to think those things without saying them. Now he heard the labor inside it. When did you get this place? 3rd month after the divorce. She took down 2 mugs from a shelf. Neither matched. The old owner was retiring. She let me work here part-time for a while. Then I bought the lease and the inventory off her. Marcus looked around again. You bought it. With the settlement, yes. She met his eyes briefly. Part of it. He nodded. There were a few bad months, she said. Then Mother's Day saved me. Apparently men panic buy flowers in bulk if you remind them in time. Marcus almost smiled. That tracks. The kettle steamed. Isabella poured water over grounds in a simple ceramic dripper Marcus was surprised she knew how to use. Maybe she'd learned. Maybe she always knew, and he had never asked the right kind of question. Maya says you're good at this, he said. Isabella set one mug in front of him. Maya is biased. She says the arrangements sell out on Fridays. That's because people procrastinate. They stood in the small shop with coffee between them, not quite strangers, not quite anything with a name. Marcus took a sip. It was stronger than he expected. Better, too. He looked at the buckets near the window, at the late sun touching the edges of the leaves, then back at her. I wanted to apologize, he said. Isabella did not move. He went on before he could recalculate it into something safer. Not for the divorce. He set the mug down carefully. I was right to end the marriage. A flicker in her face. Agreement, maybe. Or just acceptance that the sentence no longer needed arguing. But I should have seen you sooner, he said. I should have heard what you were trying to say before everything turned into the rest of it. Isabella leaned one hip against the counter. Marcus looked at the coffee instead of her for a second. For 13 years, I thought providing was the same thing as loving well. Maybe I thought it was better because it was measurable. He shook his head once. Small and humorless. Bills paid. Tuition covered. Goals met. I kept treating every problem like something to allocate resources at. She was quiet a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentler than he deserved and not gentle enough to let him off easily. You didn't know any other language. No, he said, I didn't. Outside, a bus passed on the street with a long hydraulic sigh. Isabella looked down into her mug. I'm sorry too, she said, for what I did and for how I did it. Marcus did not interrupt. She traced one finger along the handle of the mug. I kept waiting for you to magically understand things I didn't even know how to say clearly. Then, when that didn't work, I chose... She let out a breath. Something stupid, something cheap, something that made me feel visible for 5 minutes at a time. Marcus heard the old anger stir faintly, and then pass through without finding much to attach to. A year had worn the sharpest edges off them both. Not erased, just changed the scale. You were visible, he said before he could stop himself. She looked up at him. No, she said softly, not to myself. The sentence stayed between them. Not a social media line, not a summary, just something plain enough to be true. Marcus nodded once. On the work table behind her lay a ribbon spool, half unwound, and a stack of order slips held down by pruning shears. In another room, a cooler door opened and shut with a hollow seal sound. The shop was full of life arranged for other people's anniversaries, apologies, funerals, and first dates. All those moments requiring flowers because words alone felt insufficient or late. Maya comes here a lot? Marcus asked. Every weekend if she can. Isabella smiled a little into her mug. She's terrible at sweeping and very good at pretending she's not in a better mood after handling peonies. Marcus looked toward the front window. She doesn't tell me much. She tells you some things. She tells me scheduling. That got a real smile out of her. That sounds like your daughter. He let himself smile too, briefly. Then the smile went. I'm trying, he said. I know. He looked at her. She lifted one shoulder. She knows too. She's just 16 and hurt. Marcus nodded. There wasn't much left to say after that. They drank their coffee. The silence between them no longer had the charged defensive quality it once would have. It was simply silence. Two people who had loved badly, harmed each other thoroughly, and lived long enough to see the wreckage cool into history. Marcus set his empty mug down first. I should go. Isabella did not ask him to stay. Okay. He reached for his keys, then paused. Thanks for the coffee. Thanks for coming, she said. The sentence could have meant several things. He did not ask which one. Outside, the air had cooled. Marcus got into his car, but did not start it right away. Through the windshield, he could see Isabella back inside the shop, lifting the watering can again. She moved from bucket to bucket with a plain, absorbed focus that had nothing performative in it. At one point, she paused over a tray of young potted herbs near the window, touched one leaf between two fingers, and smiled, not toward any customer, not toward him, not toward memory, just at the thing itself. Marcus looked away. On the passenger seat lay a postcard he had kept in the car for months without deciding what to do with it. A black and white photograph of the Eiffel Tower on the front, bought at an airport gift shop years ago on a business trip to Paris. He had turned into 3 client dinners and 1 rushed museum hour because leisure made him uneasy when it couldn't be expensed. He picked it up. On the back, in his own handwriting from some late night he barely remembered, were the words, "You were right, there are things money can't buy." He had never sent it. Now he turned it over once, looked at the stamp box left blank, then opened the glove compartment and slid it inside. When he finally started the car and pulled away from the curb, the shop disappeared in the rearview mirror after the first stop sign. Halfway back to Palo Alto, he called Maya. She answered on the fourth ring. Hi. Her voice was cautious, but not closed. Hey. Marcus kept one hand on the wheel. You busy tonight? A little. Why? He watched traffic open ahead of him in a long, clean line. I was thinking I could cook. There was a pause. Cook what? Marcus let out a breath that almost turned into a laugh. Pasta. That's not cooking, that's boiling. Okay, sauce. Sauce, too. Another pause. Since when do you make sauce? Since recently. He glanced at the road, then smiled despite himself. I found a video. Maya was quiet just long enough for him to imagine her deciding whether to let him have the moment. On YouTube, she asked. Yes, a beat. Then, very faintly, she laughed. Not a big laugh, not forgiveness, just a crack in the wall. What kind? And she asked. I haven't chosen yet. That sounds safe? I'm trying to avoid setting the kitchen on fire. Good plan. Marcus tightened his grip on the wheel, not from nerves. Just because relief, when it came this small, needed somewhere to go. So, he said, you want to come over and supervise? Maya gave another small laugh. Maybe. Maybe's fine. He could hear her shifting things around on her end, maybe books, maybe a backpack zipper. Ordinary sounds. He let them fill the line. I'll text you when I start, he said. Okay. They hung up. The freeway carried him north through the late light, past office parks and gas stations and trimmed sound walls covered in bougainvillea. Nothing was fixed. The marriage was gone. Maya was still cautious. Isabella's peace no longer belonged to him in any way. But the road ahead, for once, did not feel like something to control so much as something to stay on. Marcus drove on. He did not feel happy. Only older, quieter, slightly less certain of what counted as winning. It was enough.